And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
What's up, everybody? Attention to roll call.
Hey, good morning. How are you this morning, everybody?
Morning, guys. Listen, I'm going to be traveling from the road. Eric's out today. He's still not feeling well. He'll be back. But Ron was kind enough to produce for us. We're going to be having Jim Walden join us. He's going to be talking about being the first mayoral candidate to fight in an NYPD smoker that's taking place this Thursday at Coney Island. So excited to have him come on. But before that happens, we're going to weigh in on the mass shooting that occurred in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. So, Ron, thank you, brother.
Hey, no problem. No problem. Yeah, Jim's actually here, so we can bring him up and say good morning to him after Marlon says good morning to everybody.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Yeah, had a lot to talk about, especially concerning what happened in Brooklyn on Sunday morning. But before we get into that, let's hear from Jim and let's see what he has going on.
All right, so let's bring up to the stage mayoral candidate Jim Walden. Good morning, Jim. How are you, sir?
Good morning. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
Jim, what's up, brother?
Hey, John. How you doing?
What's going on, dude? How's the training going, man?
Yeah, it's been intense. Every day, oftentimes at 5 a.m. So I'm the first guy in the gym. And it's been an interesting ride. There's a lot of physical and mental challenges that some of which I imagined, others that I didn't. So it's been a great journey.
No, yeah, I fought in a smoker in 18 in the Garden. So yeah, boxing is just it's definitely it's one of those things, man. It's like it definitely humbles you right away, like training for it. Who is? I know you're fighting a retired cop. What's his name?
His name is Mickey Featherston, but unfortunately there was some issue with his physical. So I think that Mickey's still going to fight, but they may have to substitute some other opponent at the last minute. I'm still waiting to get confirmation on that. But either way, I'm going to be fighting against someone who's been fighting for like decades, not a newbie. So it's definitely, let's put it this way. There have been a number of times during sparring with a number of opponents that I've been dropped like a sack of potatoes. So it's like it's a real fight. I've been punched in the face many times now. So it's definitely, I'm in it for the long haul.
No. What made you want to do that? Like, what made you want to get into the smoker, and how'd that even come about? We know Pat Russo, Dave Steve, great guys, great organization. Like, what happened there? Like, why were you like, you're in the midst of this run and you've been all over New York City? Why'd you decide I'm going to do this? Like, how'd that come about?
Well, it's a really good question, John. And I start from the place that I've known the NYPD Cops and Kids program for years. I've supported it. I've been to a couple of their tournaments. I've seen the interaction between retired cops and at-risk kids, and it's just inspiring. I went to a tournament, I think about 8 months ago, or no, it was before I filed to run for mayor. But there was some interactions between the kids and the cops that I just thought were transformative, and a real relationship there, and seeing cops and at-risk kids working together, the cops mentoring them, the kids getting an avenue to succeed, a path to success, mentoring, discipline, all of that stuff. I just think that if we could scale this across the city and incorporate things other than boxing to create these kind of mentorship opportunities for at-risk kids, we would be doing a lot better in terms of breaking the cycle of poverty and breaking the cycle of crime.
You guys got any questions, guys, or you want me to lead the whole thing?
No, go ahead.
All right, no, I just don't want like, feel free to jump in if you have any questions for Jim. But so Jim, it's going to be a tough road for you. Just like the mayor race is a tough road. What are your predictions on the fight? What are we going to see? Why are we going? What do you think?
Well, I wanted to do it largely to get more people there for the tournament. This is an important tournament for a lot of young boxers. They want to succeed. This is obviously, one of these New York events that is such a classic that many people outside the boxing world don't know about. So I was trying to use the platform of running for mayor to draw attention to it and try to get more people there and get more people to see exactly what Cops and Kids does. But at another level, it's kind of about integrity, right? I've said this many times during the race that a lot of the problems that we have are based on a lack of leadership, a lack of integrity. And, boxing is integrity, man. There's no, you're standing there in the ring against someone who wants to knock your block off. You got to be focused, you got to be disciplined, and you have to be true to yourself. And that's, a way symbolic of the way I've tried to run the campaign. I've tried to run the campaign not just based on talking at people, but trying to find real solutions to serious problems, take the problems and not just say, I want to solve them, but articulate how I'm going to solve them. And when those things require the payment of money, how I'm going to pay for it. That's the kind of leadership that I think that we need from candidates, whatever candidate is chosen. And so there was a symbolism in this that I was hoping to get through.
Yeah, that's
Go
really
ahead.
great.
I think that you.
Go ahead, John.
Oh man, I'm broken up. I think. Sorry, Rob.
No, you're good.
Go, bro.
You're good.
Oh, I'm good. All right. So yeah, no. Like I said, I think that your campaign has been brilliant. I really do. I hate where you're polling. I really do. But you're the first mayor. You're the first mayoral candidate to come out and say that everybody should get behind whoever's polling the highest come September, if I'm not wrong, right? September or October. Do you still stand with that? Eric Adams never said anything about that. He never got behind you with that pledge. Cuomo did for a minute. Slee was saying, I'm the Republican nominee. Why would I drop out? Like, what are your thoughts around that? What are your thoughts around the mayor race right now, Jim? Like, as it sits right now and your chances to win the seat of the mayor?
Yeah. So, John, it's kind of funny. I've been now, I think, on maybe 10 different TV shows and podcasts, and a lot of people ask a form of that question. It's now I issued what I'm now calling the no spoiler pledge. I issued that on July 3rd in writing, put it on my website. It was obviously an inspiration that was based only on math, right? To the extent that there are a lot of people in the city that agree that a Mamdani administration would be disastrous for pick your reason. The math doesn't work out when you have 4 or now 5 candidates that are going to be splitting that vote at whatever level they're splitting at. So whether, you look at the Emerson poll and I was at 7%, or you look at some of the recent polls and I'm somewhere between 1% and 3%, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're running a race. People aren't really dialed in right now. And starting in September, a lot could change just among the non-Mamdani candidates. But regardless of who gets higher in the polls, one thing's clear: we're going to be taking votes from each other. Mamdani's got a solid base. He, in the Democratic primary, he got about 550,000 votes. In the general election, he's going to get some percentage of the independents who left the Democratic Party because it wasn't far left enough for them. There's a big cohort of those people in the independent voters. So if you're just conservative about it, he's going to get 600,000 votes. And even if we have more people that show up for this election than in past elections, we're only going to have 700,000 or 800,000 votes to split among either 4 or 5 candidates. So the position I have today is the same position I had on July 3rd, which is I do not want to be a spoiler, and nor should anyone else. We should all put the interests of New York City above our own political ambitions, regardless of whether there's an R or an I next to our name on the ballots. The votes are going to be taken from one another, and we will have the best path to having a free market, capitalist, administration and city hall if it's a one-on-one race. So the position I took on July 3rd, which I did for myself, not for any of the other candidates. I did it for myself and New York. I did it for myself because it aligned my political position with my moral compass. And I was hoping that the other candidates would sign on, and we'll see. But, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I do not want to be a spoiler in this race. If I took 3%, 7%, 15% of the vote away from one of the other candidates that was polling higher than me, I could not live with myself. So that's my position.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is as we're speaking, like there's more and more people attempting to jump in the race now. I just saw Joseph Hernandez. He's been doing like a media blitz. He's coming out now, right? And I don't know where he's polling or what he's right. I believe it's way too late to be entering this race. We may have him on the podcast. I've spoken with him prior. I've spoken with him about a month back. And my feelings are honestly like I just can't see. I don't see there's a lot of fear mongering around Zohran Mamdani, which I'm not understanding, because I honestly believe Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams gave us Zohran Mamdani. And when I look at Eric Adams' 2021 campaign, it looks identical to Zohran Mamdani's platform. So I'm sitting there and I'm saying, I really think New York is headed in a really bad direction. It might be faster under Mamdani, but I believe that the Democratic Socialists of America control New York and New York City as we speak. They are the face of the Democratic Party. That's why Cuomo and Adams are not running as Democrats. They've been kicked out of their own party, which they ran for a long time. They're out of it, and I don't see them being the saviors of New York City. And that's why I always liked your message of vote differently, because I really believe that it's time to vote differently.
Well, let me ask you to take a slightly different take on this, because if you step back for a minute and you look at what's happened in New York City, yes, it is absolutely true that the DSA has really mobilized and they're very committed, and it's not necessarily because of freeze the rent. It is because of a different way of structuring society that they believe is more fair and more equitable. Putting all of the political labels aside, there are a lot of people in New York City that are moving away from the far left of the Democratic Party. We had something like 50 or 80,000 independents at some point 15, 20 years ago. Now there's almost 1 million. We have now 3 independent candidates, although I'm the only true independent. We now have 4 people, if you include Hernandez, on an independent line. That really hasn't happened before. We've had an independent make city matching funds for the first time in New York City history in a citywide race. That's never happened before. So one of the things that I find super interesting is we have one part of our political system, which is the far left, and they are united and they are strong and they are showing up together, and they don't all have the same reasons for showing up, but they believe in their messenger. And whether it's me, Sliwa, Adams, Cuomo, or Hernandez, we've got a free market component, all of which are kind of saying the same thing. Now, I take your point about Adams, but to me, it's just very simple. I don't believe in socialism. I don't believe in anti-Semitism. I don't believe in bigotry against cops. And I think that those 3 defining things of the Mamdani campaign are toxic for New York City and toxic for the country. And so, listen, I wish that I could resurrect Mother Teresa to be a candidate for mayor and have her line up against Zohran Mamdani. But we've got now, depending on your count, either 4 or 5 people that are vying to be the alternative. The math doesn't work, period, full stop. So what I would say to your viewers is stop focusing on anything other than getting the candidates to unify against the front runner, have it be a one-on-one race. And John, I would be willing to bet any amount of money that in a one-on-one race between Mamdani and any of these candidates, the free market wins. And and we turn our backs on anti-Semitism, and we turn our backs on bigotry against the police. And those three things to me are super important.
Yeah, again, like I don't disagree with you. Listen, the anti-Semitism, I definitely don't disagree. Like you know, like it's something that's risen, but it's something that's risen under this administration. You know, we've never seen in New York City history this amount of these amount of I support protesting. I've never seen nightly takeovers like I have since October 7th. And you know, I could say that I'm against those things, but like there's zero pushback from the current administration. And then when I look at his socialist platform, I do not believe that Eric Adams is a free market candidate. I just don't. You know, we're talking about city-run grocery stores. We have them. We're talking about subsidizing almost every private business. We're doing it. You know, and I'm like, and the whole knock on the police again. It's Eric Adams' 2021 campaign, and only Andrew Cuomo was slightly better because he still brought in bail reform. You know, well-intentioned but horribly placed. Bail reform, raise the age, discovery reform. These are all things that have weakened our criminal justice system and have emboldened criminals. And he actually gave credence to the defund the police movement, where he said, you know, this is a legitimate school of thought. So, you know, we're blasting Zohran Mamdani that he hates the police because of a tweet that he did 5 years ago. But the governor and the mayor, who actually worked very hard to defund the police and is continuing right now to keep police out of work. I mean, like I you know, most of their platforms, I just don't believe. I believe you're a free market candidate. I believe Curtis Lee was a free market candidate. I spoke to Joseph Hernandez. I believe he's a free market candidate. The other three, I just see us going more in the same direction. And
John,
I just can't.
I'm not going to use the phrase "I don't disagree" because that's not agreeing. I agree with you. But at the end of the day, you know, listen, this is one of the unfortunate things about politics. And it's not true of just Democrats or just Republicans, but these candidates blow with the wind. And one of the things that is different about me is I say what I'm going to say. It's thoughtful. It's based on analysis, research, data. And that's what I stick to now. And if in the limited circumstances in which I've educated myself and realized I need to change my position, you don't have to guess about it because I say, I'm going to change my position and here's why. We don't have that kind of integrity in our political system writ large, right? It doesn't matter whether it's national, state, or the local level. But at the end of the day, I agree with you that Cuomo is a compromised candidate. I agree with you that Adams is a compromised candidate for all the reasons that you're articulating and more. But at the end of the day, we're going to come down to a day where it is going to be either 4 or 5 candidates against Mamdani or 1. And if that day comes and you would vote for Eric Adams over Zohran Mamdani in light of the clarity of what he would do to the city, then what I would say to your viewers and your listeners is focus on the math. And, you know, everyone help get the word out about the fact that it wasn't 5 years ago that Zohran Mamdani articulated his vision for defunding the police. He did it when he was running for state assembly too. He did it in college. He did it, after his college years. He did it during his political career. The man believes that the police are evil and that prison is and crime is a social construct. That's what he believes. He believes that socialism is a better way to plan an economy than a free market economy. That's what the man believes. So if you are against those principles and you agree, even if it's transactional politics and even if Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo blow with the wind, at this moment in time, they are not going to support those ideas. And if the free market candidate wins, that will give whoever wins the mandate. So again, I'm going to focus not on attacking the other free market candidates. I'm going to try to make sure everyone understands what they're getting with Mamdani. And we haven't even talked about his sympathy for terrorists. But that's what I'm going to focus on, in addition to trying to get the message out of the difference that I offer, regardless of who the candidate is. because I'm not a career politician. I actually have been working for New Yorkers for 30 years, first as a federal prosecutor, and then as a private lawyer when I didn't have to. I could have easily just stuck with my corporate clients. I chose to do it because it's the right thing to do for a lawyer, to fight for New Yorkers. And that's what I was doing even before I was trying to get people's votes. That differentiates me from everyone.
That was the best explanation I've heard from anybody, Jim. I'm not gonna lie. That was the best breakdown I've heard. Like, I've been given this argument for a few months now. No one's came back at me with that. So that's a great argument. So Thursday night, right? Coney Island.
Thursday night, baby. You know, I know I have events on Friday, so I'm hoping I'm not like broken and bruised up. But listen, I'm excited about it. It's going to be you know, an energetic crowd. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of real blows thrown. It's 3 1-minute rounds, so it's not going to be too awful. But I'm there. I've never boxed before. This is the first time I've ever done it in my life. So I hope that it inspires people to push outside themselves and really think about the things that matter in this city and land the plane well when it comes to this election. Whoever wins, it's got to be someone who embraces New York values. And New York values are, you know, standing up for each other, delivering city services with excellence, not mediocrity, getting corruption out of City Hall once and for all, and having a City Hall based fundamentally on integrity so that we can be proud of our government again. Because the one thing we have to solve if we want to stay sustainable is we have to restore trust in government. If we cannot do that, then we are on a downslide that there's no stopping.
All right, yeah, awesome. Listen, for everyone that's interested, we'll add the links into where to buy tickets, how to get tickets for this. We'll also be promoting through our social media for Cops and Kids and you know, an NYPD smoker, so you could get out, get the tickets to see Jim.
I can make it easier on you. I donated $25,000 of my own money to the charity for this tournament. And so I am told I have as many free tickets as I want. So if anybody wants a ticket, just send a note to jim@jim4nyc.com. We'll make sure that we send you a link with a ticket that you can print up. It's at Maimonides Park right near Coney Island on Thursday. Doors open at 6. I enter the ring at 7 p.m. and I welcome as many of your viewers as are around to come see it and enjoy the night on me.
That's great. Hey, Tim Silva has a question for you, Jim. Has Jim met Mickey? Do you know him? And who's going down?
I'm guessing I'm going down. Although I'm going to try my damnedest. I'm now told that I have a pretty good power punch on my right side. But Mickey's a great guy. I have met him a couple times. He's a really smart guy, a ton of integrity, a really, really excellent technical boxer who is formidable, especially for a greenhorn like me. So I'm putting my money on me, but if I'm being honest about it, I think that Mickey's got the upper hand here.
So Jim, I'm just going to give you an advice. My friend was actually a featherweight boxer. He was actually a champion for a while, and he gave me the advice: hands up, blocking, and just straight punches. He's like, don't try to act like a boxer. You're going to get your ass kicked. He's like, just straight punches, jabs and straights. That's it. Keep your hands up. And it's carried me well throughout the years, like without, because I'm definitely not a boxer.
John, that is amazing advice. Tell your friend that is amazing advice.
Yeah, no hooks, no nothing. Hands up, straight punches only. And then, and I'll tell you, people laugh at the minute round. They need to get in there and do it because it's
people can laugh all they want to. 3 1-minute rounds, believe me, that's as a guy that hasn't even been in a gym for 2 years, this was probably the most intense month physically that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, it's brutal, dude. Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm gonna be there, but I'm gonna be late. So if I don't catch you, I miss you. I have an event earlier that night. So I didn't know you were going on at 7. I thought you were gonna go on a little later, but I'll catch up with you either way.
Yeah, my wife and kids will be there. They'd love to meet you.
Oh, awesome, Jim. I appreciate it, brother. And any message you want to give out to the audience before we move on?
Yeah, show a lot of love to these kids, man, because they are working hard, working a lot harder than me. And, they've made a choice in their lives to do something to help build themselves up and to get real discipline and to accept mentorship and to create a path for themselves to a better life. And you just got to respect all the people, the kids and all the cops and all the other trainers and officials that are involved in this kind of thing, because this is a beautiful thing in New York, and I hope lots of people go.
Yeah, awesome, brother. Ron and Marlon, you guys got anything for Jim before we let him go?
No. I just want to thank Jim for coming on once again. And I gotta say, this is one of the most unique things I've heard of. But again, it's a very good cause, as Jim has noted. So I think it's going to be exciting, and I'm hoping to swing by there as well. And wish you luck, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks. I probably will need it, but thanks for having me on, guys. I love being on your show.
Yeah, thanks again, Jim,
Thanks
for
for all the
joining
work
us.
you're doing too.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And again, great cause that you're stepping forward for. So it's really appreciated. And like John said, unique. It's not something that a normal candidate's going to do to step up to bring awareness to, and it's something that you're doing. So we really appreciate that.
All right, guys.
All
Have a
right,
great
Jim,
show.
good luck, brother.
Thanks for everything.
All right,
Thanks, Jim.
Do
Thank
good,
you.
bro.
All right.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to dominate the whole thing. I was like, I'm in the car, and it's like kind of weird. I thought I was like cut off, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You're in the car. It's still your show.
Yeah.
So let's move on. A lot going on in the city over the weekend. We had a really horrific incident in Brooklyn, where I believe it's up to 12 people shot now.
Yes.
12 people shot. 3 of those died in a Brooklyn restaurant / club in Brooklyn. So it's just horrific. And, the nightclub scene has really, we haven't had major incidences like this, but this one was a bad one. And the police commissioner is saying that it's gang related. There was security at the scene, bouncers, but then again, the mayor, when he first came out, did away with the march operations. And, did that have something to do with this? Because, he ended the nightlife safety, phasing out march enforcements, right, for the CURE program. And could this have been prevented because in November there was a shooting in the same location? So with the march operation, normally after that shooting, there would have been scrutiny. There would have been an operation absolutely conducted at the location. They would have walked in. They would have checked if they're licensed security, if they were permitted properly, and throughout the rest. So what are your first thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I'll go first. Hey, John, are we getting feedback from you? Anybody else had that feedback?
I'll mute him and see.
Oh, you get.
Is it? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So for all of you guys, just to reiterate what happened, it was this shooting was occurred on Franklin Avenue, Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, and it is it's at the address is 903. It's the 900 block of Franklin Avenue. And what's interesting about that location is that Transit District 32 has their headquarters is basically right across the street from the shooting. So if that shooting was any closer to the facility, it would literally be in the parking lot, But I I think this is kind of it's terrible that this happened, especially coming what 2 weeks after the other mass shooting in Manhattan. And it's even more unfortunate that again this happened like right across the street from an NYPD facility. But the news is saying that there was basically four guys shooting at each other in the club, and two of the two of those shooters were perhaps two of the three people that were killed. So they're saying it was gang related, but I believe that this shooting kind of ju- ju- just to just to note all the problems that we've talked about on the show with the department, the fact that the department doesn't share intel well, the fact that we don't have enough people on the job right now, and as Ron has noted to me that building is that building could have very well just have three people in it, because again, transit, it's a transit facility and it's a NYPD Transit Bureau facility. And what we know so far is that transit, along with many of the other precincts, are short of people, So it's not like we have, not like there was that facility was filled with cops at the time. But the problem is that, like we said many times, we don't have enough cops. And if we have enough cops, we can, we can have that, maintain that presence on the streets that would kind of act as a deterrence alone from guys, you know, um, you know, from incidents happening like this. So there's a lot to talk about in this, and we'll get to it as we go through it.
Yeah, and like like Marlon said, the John, just so you know, I'm muting you on and off because we are getting a little feedback from you. All right. I was a lieutenant in Transit District 32. I was actually a midnight platoon commander. So yeah, it's a transit facility, so they're not processing collars there, and so the manpower level is basically you have a desk officer and maybe a couple of officers, an administrative officer, an assistant desk officer in the district, during that platoon. It's on the side street right there, as we've shown in the graphic, and so a lot of the community, a lot of people in the area, other than the actual community, don't even really know that it's there. That being said, it's still a police facility. It's still literally feet from this shooting, and it just shows that the people have no regard for law enforcement, and they're not concerned that it's going to be an issue, and they're going to do this heinous crime literally feet from a police facility. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I like. So I don't place the blame at the feet of anything. Like, I'm not saying that like the march operation is the reason for this or the lack of manpower is the reason for this. But I do believe that when you look at it like as a whole, they're all ingredients in a recipe that lead to a complete tragic event like what's going to happen. When we talk about the march operation, like Ron was saying, we used to do surprise inspections on these places, ensure they had the proper security, ensure that they weren't packed, ensure that they were conducting operations in a lawful manner. And really, any businesses that were problem locations, we would do it more than just a march operation, considering there was just a shooting at that same location and there wasn't a highlight and an emphasis from the police department to be there on a weekend night, to have more cops around. And that's a problem. The problem that, whether the facility is loaded with hundreds of cops at once or not, the problem that anyone even sees a cop car and feels emboldened enough to carry a firearm. Never mind, it's not one person. We're talking upwards of 4 people have firearms. Those are just who pulled the trigger. Who knows how many guns were in that place that night? And then when you look at the bigger aspect, how many guns were on the street just in that neighborhood alone on a New York City night? Now, when you look at the lower manpower, it is what it is. Again, people feel more emboldened. So I won't sit there and say, oh yeah, this is the reason for this and this is how we could have prevented this tragedy. But when you add up all of those things together, and if we didn't have those problems, the chances of something like this happens greatly diminishes. And we're not doing it. We're not doing anything currently to try to prevent situations like this. And I thought, and I know we'll get into it, and I don't want to jump ahead, but like when we get into the press conferences that follow, you just see that this is a completely incompetent administration, and they're completely downplaying a mass shooting of 12 people where 3 innocent people were murdered. And what are most people that were there that night looking to do? They're looking to go out and have fun. And when you see the inside, like the crime scene, it's horrible, man. There's blood everywhere. It's just, this is something that, there really is no coming back from. And all I hear is, well, crime's down, shootings are down. It's absolutely, in my opinion, it's a slap in the face to all New York City residents and honestly to the country.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you, and that it is an issue. I'm gonna come back and say, somebody on here, Doreen McCormick, is saying that from what she's heard that that the location has been known as a problematic location, which goes back again to if you have community complaints, the place would have been visited. On top of the fact that there was a shooting in November, so it's just problematic that we're not addressing it. Someone else brings out a good point here, that at the mayor's press conference, which we're going to show in a little bit, the mayor's Nightlife representative wasn't at that press conference. Why would that be? Why was it only the police commissioner, a representative from the detective bureau who didn't speak, and the clergy and our violence interrupters, which we can get into and talk about in a little bit. But the New York Post put out a video of the chaos of them running out as the shooting is happening. So let's just throw that up real quick. You just see everybody just running literally for their lives, and some people that are blurred out that are obvious victims. That guy running, I don't know if he was shot right there. Let's go back right there a little bit. This guy right here, if I'm the squad, he's the first guy I'm looking for. This guy right here. Because if he's not shot, he's hiding it. And why these other people would go back to the scene there like that, I don't know. So, I mean, Marlon, what do you think when you know?
Yes,
It's insane, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. We've talked about on the show about the if crime is down, then perps are becoming very emboldened. We keep seeing the brazenness of the incidents that are happening, and it's like telling you that they have no fear of carrying and no fear of being involved in incidents that are kind of outrageous. You have the shooting in town square, that happened 3 weeks ago. You have this. You have the robberies of off-duty MOS. You have remember not too long ago there was a off-duty robbery of a MOS who was actually still wearing his uniform.
Yeah.
So when we hear that crime is down, I think. I question all of that. We've questioned the accuracy of all the statistics that the NYPD puts out. But I think one thing that's quite obvious is that there's a certain emboldenedness that these perps are feeling right now, and you have to ask yourself, how could crime be down when these perps feel they can do that. If there's no fear from them, then there's no way crime would be down. Because there's no, if crime was down, then guys would hesitate to do these things because they don't know if that cop car is coming around the corner or if there's a foot post in the area. But we're not seeing that right now.
Yeah, 100%. The proactive police work, as Eric always says, the intrusive police work is just not there anymore. Very few and far between, and they're not afraid to carry the guns. Again, now you don't have the march operation, so you don't know if it's licensed security who knows that they're going to have to search people as they're coming in and check for these things. It's just a recipe for disaster. But like John said, let's take a look at what Police Commissioner Tish said for the press conference.
Ready, Delaney? All right. Good morning. The information I'm about to provide is preliminary and subject to change. I'm going to brief you on a shooting incident that occurred earlier this morning in the Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn. The details are as follows. At approximately 3:27 a.m., the 911 call center started receiving multiple 911 calls about a shooting inside of 903 Franklin Avenue, which is a lounge known as Taste of the City. Officers arrived within minutes of the first 911 calls and found numerous gunshot victims inside of the location. Currently, we have identified 11 victims ranging in age from 27 to 61, 8 males and 3 females. 3 of the victims have already been pronounced: 1 male age 27, 1 male age 35, and 1 male of an unknown age. The 8 remaining victims are at local area hospitals with what is being described right now as non-life-threatening injuries. We are withholding victims' names pending family notifications, and the investigation into this incident is ongoing. What we know preliminarily is that there was a dispute inside of the crowded club that led to the shooting. We have multiple shooters involved in this shooting, and we have recovered at least 36 shell casings so far from what appears to be multiple guns. At this time, no one is in custody. Our detectives are canvassing available CCTV video in and around the location. Our detectives have also recovered a firearm in the vicinity of Bedford Avenue and Eastern Parkway. We're investigating at this time whether this firearm was tied to the shooting incident. I'll now take a few brief questions.
Any questions? Yes. What's the magnitude of this type of shooting that the department's dealing with right now?
Well, we have, 11 people shot? 11 people shot, 3 dead. It's a terrible shooting that occurred in the city of New York. It's no other way to...
And it's been a pretty quiet, or lower numbers of shootings.
Yeah, I mean, we have the lowest number of shooting incidents and shooting victims 7 months into the year that we've seen on record in the city of New York. Something like this is, of course, thank God, an anomaly, and it's a terrible thing that happened this morning, but we're going to investigate it and get to the bottom of what went down.
Next, CBS.
Is there any history of prior shootings taking place inside this location or lounge?
Yeah, we need to confirm this, but I did hear that there was a shooting at this location, non-fatal, in, I believe, November of 2024. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Were there any, that you're aware of, any metal detectors or anything where they would have checked for weapons?
I don't know at this time.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So the first thing that comes to mind with me, and I know, John, I know where you're going to go with this, but the fact that she wasn't aware that there was a shooting 9 months ago in November at that location. She was not briefed properly. Frank Giordano knew that there was a shooting there. That's something that is critical to the conversation. Obviously, the reporter knew that was asking that question. So that's the first thing I take from that. But John, I'm going to unmute you. I know exactly where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Yeah, one, I just think I think it was her. I think it was the worst press conference I've seen from Jessica Tish. I honestly do. You know, Shell was out tweeting out at us in the middle of the night that same night, you know, over nonsense. And I think, you know, I couldn't believe the whole emphasis on we still got to continue to push the narrative. Don't believe your lying eyes. Crime's down. We have the lowest shootings in recorded history. Nobody believes you. This is an anomaly. We just had another mass shooting occur in Midtown in the middle of the day. It's actually not an anomaly. And, you know, a lot of the incidents that are occurring that are shooting are multiple people being shot or shot at. A lot of these are mass shootings. A lot of these gang shootings are, in fact, by definition, mass shootings. And it's a consistent downplay of what the reality is for New Yorkers. And I honestly think it was a terrible, disgusting response on our part. It was like, well, what do you want us to do? You know, it is what it is. We've broken records here in this city, and literally no one believes you. And they don't believe you because they shouldn't believe you, because it's obvious to everybody that we're just being sold nonsensical lies. And again, I'm just gonna say, like, for everyone that's like, oh, well, shootings are down, John. It depends. What are we counting as a shooting? If we're counting the only time that perps have good aim as a shooting, then maybe, yeah. So then in that case, I'll agree with you. But we're celebrating bad aim. We're not celebrating that, in fact, there are less guns on the street and there are less bullets flying in New York City. We're just celebrating the fact that less people are getting hit. And that's what Jessica Tish is doing. And it's honestly wrong and disgusting, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you know, I even question whether she knew that the transit facility was right next to her. Yeah. But I agree. The you put out also on Twitter that Kaz made some comments about this, and what's interesting is Kaz deleted those comments, but those comments noted that it was one incident. You know, so like John said on Twitter, there's a concerned effort by the people in charge of the city to downplay it and to downplay the keyword is incidents. You know, I think that's deliberate, and I think it goes back again to the March program, because you know one of the reasons why they got rid of it was because they thought it was intrusive and disruptive to Black and brown businesses. You know, they thought it was it unfairly targeted those businesses. But ironically, what do you see here? Who are the victims of this right now? You know, they're Black. You know, it's a program that would have surely have helped this situation. And the fact that Adams got rid of it, and we've seen lots of problems come out of it. The fact that it's no longer there, for instance, like the racket that was being run by Caban's brother, and we've seen it target brown and Black businesses. So we've seen a lot of issues that have come out of the removal of the March program. And I think what's happening here is them wanting to downplay this because they don't want you to look back further and see how the consequences of Eric Adams' poor decision making at that time, and that the fact that we're living through it right now. You know?
Yeah, and you know, for ComStat purposes, we always talked about, you know, when you're looking at the numbers of shootings, it's shooting incidences and then shooting victims, and it's actually listed on the ComStat sheet that way. But this isn't the time to say that. This isn't the time to say, oh, it's one incident and, you know, you have now 12 victims. It's a heinous crime. It's a heinous incident. It's a mass shooting. Gang related, not gang related. Okay, it wasn't an active shooter situation where someone went in and just shot up a place for the sake of shooting up a place for terroristic means or whatever. But it doesn't take away the fact that 13 people were shot, 12 people were shot, and 3 people were killed. And whether or not they were involved or not, 3 lives were lost. And so, you know, and as far as, you know, the we're not counting the misses of the shots fired. And I don't know where that is at this point, because I know when I was a precinct commander, that was always a part of the equation. That was always part of the conversation, was how many shots fired, because like John says, just because they missed doesn't take away from the seriousness. It's not celebratory gunfire. It's not the 4th of July. It's not midnight at New Year's Eve when people are firing their guns into the air in what we used to call celebratory gunfire. If you have a shots fired incident, that means somebody was shooting at somebody. And that means that, yeah, we got lucky. Somebody else got lucky. Somebody else's life was saved because somebody missed when they took that shot. And those things have to be considered when you're taking into consideration your deployment, your crime strategy plans, and when you're talking about your crime statistics. But the narrative to the public of how many people were actually hit is really what they're saying. We don't know. I don't know, because I don't see the CompStat sheets, and I don't know that they're accurately being depicted, because when I was a precinct commander, again, if a shot spotter went off, and that's another issue with the shot spotters being down, not being replaced, not being fixed, whatever the case may be, they would play the shot spotter sound at CompStat on us and say, Ron, really? This was finalized for, fireworks or a motorcycle backfiring or a car backfiring? You really think that was the truth? And they would call you out on the carpet for that, because we were looking at those things when we were putting our plans together, formulating where the violence is, because a shots fired incident is considered an act of violence. And that has to be taken into consideration. It has to be spoken about, and it was always spoken about at CompStat. I don't know that they're doing that now. I can't speak to what's being done now, but it's never being spoken about in the public realm.
Yeah, when I talk about the shot spot, I've been talking about it a lot, because a lot of my friends still work in busy houses, and they're like, Brooklyn North, the Bronx, and they're like, dude, I haven't heard a shot spotter in a year. And I stay up on the national politics of law enforcement in particular. And I know everyone remembers the time when the shot spotters were considered racist, right? Brandon Johnson said they were racist. He pulled down the contract. Eric Adams didn't jump on that bandwagon, but I personally think what I think is happening now is New York City taxpayers are paying millions of dollars for these shot spotters, and they're either turned off or they're not being maintained and they're not working. Because I'll tell you right now, I know they're not going off. I know that they're not. So, I mean, and I don't just hear it from cops or disgruntled cops. I hear it from workers. I hear it from duty captains. I hear it from duty inspectors. They're not going off in the 7.5, in the 7.3, in the 4.4. They're not going off. Doesn't make sense. But traditionally they would go off. It's not that less people. Obviously we see there are still shootings in New York City. And just another point on the low manpower. We always pay, just think when you were a commanding officer, Ron, if you had that bar or lounge in your command and someone was shot there in November, you would order the midnights and into the 4 to 12s to do special attention, right? And so, hey, listen, I don't want you there all night, handle your jobs, but go sit over there when you're bored. I need people out there, right? You would have your condition team go by there, your crime team go by there. There would be that constant cadence of cops going around those problematic nightclubs, which this would be. And I don't for a second believe that was the last 911 call that happened at that place. There's probably been incidents after incident of fights and other things coming from that location. So, I think, again, if we had the proper manpower, this could have been avoided. If someone was even thinking about doing it, they would know that cops would be there in a second. And I just don't think that same level of care and concern is there. And I'm not blaming the precinct CO. I believe that was the 7-1. I believe that, 7-1 and 7-7. I think it was a 7-1. I'm not saying that the 7-1 precinct CO is doing a bad job or the cops are doing a bad job. What I'm saying is they don't have the manpower to properly address these and still handle the 911 calls that are coming over.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Michael Freed, who's a crime analysis officer, brings up a point too. Anytime you have an incident like that, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to run the history. And you're going to run the history of not only that, you're going to look at the 911 calls, you're going to look at 311. You want to know about the noise complaints too. And that also feeds into your March operation. Now, the problem with March operations is unless you have an incident like a shooting or something like that where you can try and get it fast-tracked, it literally takes months to schedule. It takes months to schedule to do a March operation on a location, unless it's a high-profile thing. But I had precinct resources. In the 111 precinct, everybody talked about Bell Boulevard. And I never had problems on Bell Boulevard when I was the precinct commander and the XO in the 111. I didn't have the big problems. It was a big bar scene and everything else, but it wasn't really problematic. In the 110, on the other hand, I had a lot of problems. I had a lot of problems with the bars along Roosevelt Avenue and Junction Boulevard and elsewhere. And like you said, I had my conditions team would go in, and sometimes we can get SLA to come along with us, not doing an official March operation, but get a representative from the SLA to come along with us and go in and do our own little mini March operations. Go in and check their licenses, check for security licenses. You don't need a March operation to do that. You can do that on your own. And you're doing that in response to community complaints and crime classifications. So again, if it's not being classified properly, I can't deploy against it. So if people aren't taking the complaints for the assaults inside these clubs and they're getting shit canned or whatever the case may be, then I don't know what's going on and I'm not going to properly deploy against it. And like you said, all right, so my question here is, I'd like to know, all right, there was a shooting there in November of 24. Like you said, I guarantee you that wasn't the last complaint that we've had at that location since then. 311s. Where's the Q team? Where are the Q teams? They're talking about Q teams. There's Q teams in Brooklyn, right? So why wouldn't that be a target for the Q teams? Because it's not easy pickings of, other types of locations. It's not going after, the vendors and things like that. So that's a question I have. Like where I guarantee you that this club has numerous 311 complaints because there are residences in that area for the noise in that location. Because this happened late at night and it was crowded. We lost Marlon for a minute, so it's just me and you right now, John.
All right. Marlon's gone while I'm driving. This is crazy. Yeah, this is the most makeshift podcast we had so far. So we apologize.
Yeah, and everyone wants to know why you're fleeing the jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'm waiting, bro. That's it.
You're on your way to Alaska to check up on our buddy.
I was supposed to be off today. I was supposed to be off. Eric was gonna cover, but he just wasn't feeling good. But yeah, it's dude. Honestly, we could sit there and bash the precinct CO, and we could bash everything. We could bash the police commissioner on it, and I'll be the first one to do it all the time. I don't mind doing it, but it all stems from the problems from City Hall, where the inability to recruit and retain officers, and a lot of that problem is stemming from the politically appointed administration inside of the NYPD. I didn't know that Kaz deleted his comments because his comment really was ridiculous to me. It was like he kept just putting one incident. So I retweeted it. And I just said basically what he's saying, and obviously I was right. Like, if you check out that tweet, obviously what I was saying was right since he deleted it. I mean, I think, again, we have to get back to a place where the NYPD it once again becomes a career instead of a short term. Oh, I'm going to do 10 and out, or I'm just waiting to hit my 20 and I'm running. Because that's what it is right now. Nobody wants to be there, and everything's not running properly. That the precincts aren't staffed properly. These Q teams are just another distraction. It's just another CRT team. It's another neighborhood safety team. It's another name thing that's going to go away with this administration. We need to have real, positive, long-term public safety solutions. And I don't see anything coming out of this administration. I just don't.
Yeah, and I'm not bashing the precinct CO either, because like you said, it's a matter of manpower and the lack of manpower. And you know, when I ask about the Q teams, you know, there's borough Q teams, there's a citywide Q team. You know, I'm sure that the 7-1 precinct has a Q team because they have a lot of issues. They have a lot of things that need to be addressed. But where are they? And you know, again, like I said, when I was the precinct CO, I had the resources. I had a conditions team that was working, that was well versed in dealing with nightlife. You know, the borough, we had nightlife meetings, quarterly nightlife meetings. You know, where the bar owners were kind of mandated. If you had problems in your command, if you wanted to keep your license, one of the things you better say is that you came to that quarterly nightlife meeting, and you know you're going to be talking with the SLA. You know, so I don't know what's going on. There is no more march operations, even though they do march operations under the guise of whatever they want to call them nowadays. You know, oh, we had a multi-agency response to this location. Isn't that the first 3 letters of March? Multi-agency response. So, you know, you're calling it by another name, but you're still doing the same thing. But there's not something formulated at the local level where the precinct commanders, who are the ones that are, you know, on a day-to-day basis having to answer for these locations and for these crimes, don't have those resources at their disposal anymore. So I find that really problematic.
No, and then like, you know, like the other problem is like the job eats itself, right? So like as the job's diminishing, what are they doing? They're adding more tasks to supervisors, and they're adding more tasks to the rank and file cops, right? Every time you do something, something needs to be documented, right? Instead of like having this body camera on, like every time you interact with anybody or do anything or do any check, there are forms that need to be filled out. Why? To justify that the cops are doing their job when we know where they are and what they're doing. Like there's like, it's become such a micromanaged job that it's imploding on itself, that like the things, that the necessary tasks that you need to do, you can't do. One, because you don't have a lot of people to do it, but even if you had enough people to do it, you can't get through it because of all the processes that need to happen for each thing you're doing, right? Every time you run a checkpoint, every time you go to a 911 call, every time you do a check on a location, right? I can't just go as a conditions team or as a conditions sergeant, go check on my nightlife locations and nothing happens that night and be credited that I actually did a good job, because I have to provide numbers to prove that I did a good job. Summonses, arrests, and things like that. And I think the micromanagement of the job is really starting to show with this diminished department, showing that, hey, like what we're doing is not working. Documenting everything for documentation's sake is ridiculous. And really, we got to get away from the numbers game. And that's the problem with the job. It's like, you know, the first thing that happened when that shooting took place was they wanted to know where the mobile field force was. It's like, oh, did we have a mobile field force there? And it just goes to the whole mentality of the job. It's like, it's always someone to blame. It's the cops' fault that would have been on that mobile field force if they took a break and they were on that meal. Oh, if there was no mobile field force there, it's the precinct CO's fault because he didn't properly deploy resources. He's gonna look at his teams, like, oh, his Q team or whatever they call the NSF team. Where were you guys? How come you guys weren't there? And really, we're just not looking for what the actual problem is. The problem is that people are emboldened. Why are they emboldened? Why are people carrying guns? Why is this location? Why did 4 people feel safe to go into that location and shoot a firearm? And instead we're going on to what a great job we've been doing overall. Let's forget that. Let's forget that 3 people were murdered and 12 people were shot. Let's forget that, you know, because we're doing such a great job. And I just can't go back on that. This administration just truly is showing how unqualified they are to be in the positions they're in. They just have no business being in.
Yeah, and like you said, the micromanagement from the top is really problematic because they can look up the statistics all they want, and make their comments from the podium and everywhere else. But it's the precinct level commander. When you put competent people in charge, there's another caveat, right? When it's not nepotism and cronyism that are giving people commands, that are people that are actually have earned a position to be a precinct commander, to go in there and address the conditions of that command and to make it a safer and a better place for the community that they're serving. And people have to remember that they're there to serve that community, not self-serving. It's not a self-serving position to be a precinct commander. It's one of the most difficult positions in the police department to be. As an executive, I've held many positions. The hardest position I've held is a precinct commander because there's so many facets to the position. But the main thing is the safety and security of the community, and also the quality of life, and that the representation of what you're doing. They have to feel that their police are there doing what's in the best interest of their community. And that comes from actually interacting with the community, having positive relationships with the community, getting information from the community, which is the key. Marlon, you were in intelligence, right? Where's the best intel come from?
Yeah, community. Sure.
Your community.
100%.
Your community members. They know what's going on in their neighborhoods. We're there temporarily. We're there part-time. We're there for 8 to 12 hours a day. They live there 24 hours a day. So if they don't have the confidence in you, like John is saying, if they don't have the confidence in you, they're not going to come to you. So there's that cycle that's been broken where you're not getting that information from the community. And even when you do get that information, what you don't have the ability to really address it the way you need to address it. Like one of the things that, I used to get a lot of positive feedback for was because when I got a complaint from the community, I responded to it. And if I couldn't do something about it, I let them know that. I didn't fluff it. I didn't gaslight them, right? I addressed conditions. I got back to people and let them know what we did about it. And we were able to attack problems. I used to say this all the time. I want to know what your issues are because I want to address those issues before they become problems, right? Proactive, not reactive policing. And so if the precinct commander doesn't have the abilities that I had when I was a precinct commander, I feel bad for them. I do. Because they're being micromanaged. And then, like you said, they're getting thrown under the bus. They're getting questioned, right? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Are they going to turn around and say, because you don't let me? I would have, because that's just the way I was, But it's really, let's take a look at the video of the mayor's press conference and tell me what you notice about this press conference. It's about 15 minutes long. I don't think we're going to play the whole thing, but I'll stop it. But let's just take a look at things just jump off the page at me.
Good morning. I should just say morning. When you have 12 people shot in the city, a mass shooting of second in a few weeks, it's just impacts and reinforces why we do this work of going after guns off our streets. And I just really want to thank the police commissioner and the men and women of the New York City Police Department, Pastor Morose, Commissioner Howard of DYCD, and A2 Mitchell from Man Up, who just has been a real partner around the issues around gun violence. It's almost 2019, we had 12 people shot in Brownsville. I remember walking with A.T. Mitchell throughout Brownsville and Pastor Morose as we looked at that issue back then, and now we're back with this shooting of this magnitude that took place in July. This took place here, as you know, in August.
So here's the first thing. He's making it about his experiences once again. First thing he's talking about is this brings me back to when I was the Brooklyn Borough president or whatever he was at the time, and I had to walk through that Brownsville shooting, which was from a Family Day event, I believe, in Brownsville. So, right there, like everything else, including the funeral of Officer Islam, it's brought back to him and his experience, not speaking about the experience that just happened and the fact that now 12 people were shot.
And then, dude, like the other thing that like annoys me about that press conference, just right off the bat, is he's almost in a way like doing exactly what he did. If you guys remember, I'm just gonna take you back to last Labor Day, where he was like almost celebrating the work that was done. Right? We had a mass shooting on the parade route on Labor Day, and he's like, everything went according to plan. Just want to thank the hard work of the men and the women of the NYPD. And like, listen, they deserve all the credit in the world, but do they deserve it right at this moment in time when we're talking about why 12 people were shot and 3 are dead inside of a nightclub? Never mind the 7 other people that were shot that same night. You know, never mind the fact we had 19 people shot throughout the whole city. You know, so like that's something I think, you know, when I hear him say that, that's what really, it brings me back to that. It's like saying, oh, look what a great job we did. It's like I don't see it. Sorry.
Hey, Marlon?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes. I've said before, I think Adams is a sociopath. You know, I think the only way he can relate to any of this is to drag himself into it. You know, but I gotta say I don't understand like how repeated incidents like this keep happening in areas. There's specific areas of the city that we know have been problems for decades, and yet these incidents keep happening, and to me it never seems like there's any sort of the department has any sort of permanent initiatives to prevent it from happening.
Wait, we're gonna get into permanent initiatives because they're standing behind them. Let's go on with the let's go on with this. Let me see if I can get it back.
Last night, we lost 3 New Yorkers, and 9 more are in the hospital after a horrific act of gun violence at a nightclub in Crown Heights. Today, while of course we mourn the victims and pray for their families and their community, we are calling on the public. We need your help. We need your help. If you were inside the club, if you heard individuals talking about this shooting, if you witnessed someone fleeing the location, every piece of information will allow us to put the puzzle together to solve this crime. If you witnessed the event, or if you have information, please call Crime Stoppers. 800-577-TIPS, TIPS. 800-577-TIPS. Gun violence of this magnitude, it really scars a community and a city. But we will continue to fight to do everything that's possible to continue to take illegal guns off our street. And I can easily stand here and tell you how we have driven down crime, we have removed over 22,000 illegal guns off our streets. I can give you those numbers and those stats, but that does not comfort those who are the victims of gun violence. What I can tell you, we will continue our aggressive pursuit to remove these illegal guns off our streets. Every single victim of violence, particularly gun violence, is one too many. And last night's mass shooting reminds us all the work that we must continue to do. And the NYPD and our partners in our faith-based community and our crisis management teams, we have mobilized them to immediately respond to this incident, as well as work with the friends and families of victims to stop any potential retaliatory action. We're always concerned after a shooting, the retaliatory shootings will follow if we don't get on the ground with our crisis management team and other partners. The Deputy Commissioner, the Commissioner of DYCD, Commissioner Howard, and A.T. Mitchell, they will be coordinating to see how do we continue to get our crisis management team out to be activated and respond to this immediately. I also communicated with Pastor Morose. We unfortunately will have to mobilize a mass shooting plan. He's going to be put in charge of getting all our partners together so we can mobilize around these mass shootings. As I stated, this is the second within weeks, and we don't want this to turn into a normal course of doing business of violence in our city. And CMS hospital responders will be dispatched to Kings County Hospital, Brookdale Hospital, and Maimonides hospitals where the shooting victims are receiving medical attention. And we want to thank those hospitals for their quick response. Additionally, we provide trauma services and facilitate mediation efforts for the families of the deceased individuals in an effort to stop the retaliatory action. And finally, we are going to pray for the families and the victims and ask for all New Yorkers to join us in prayer as we lift these families up. We cannot answer hate with hate or violence with violence, but you have my word. We will do all that we can to protect the innocent and bring the guilty to justice. We will find those who are involved. And right now, we will continue to think of the families. I want to turn it over to the police commissioner to give us any update and just an overview of what took place. Commissioner?
As the mayor said, what happened in
All right, so let's stop it there, and let's talk about the plan. Right, you talked about a plan, Marlon. Right, there's the plan. The plan is we're going to pray, and we're going to bring out the crisis management system. I didn't hear anything about the NYPD. I didn't hear anything about the gang database. I didn't hear anything about a police response or a police investigation, which even we'll continue with this press conference, you're not going to hear. You're not going to hear it. You're going to hear from the crisis management team. You're going to hear from the clergy, and they're going to say a prayer, and they're going to have a moment of silence, which I've never seen at a press conference for a mass shooting. He talks about the crisis management team there. He talks about the clergy there. He talks about getting them involved, having them respond, having the crisis management team respond to the hospitals. How is that going to solve this crime? Because the crisis management teams are not going to work with the NYPD. They're not going to give the NYPD information. What their job is, and I've worked with them extensively when I was the housing borough commander, is they go out into the community and they're supposed to quell any kind of uprisings or violence, but they're not going to tell us about it. And there's zero accountability. It's self-reporting of how many incidences that they have prevented, the crisis management team, right? The violence interrupters. But there's no way to prove it. They can say that they stopped 17 shootings. Nobody can say anything. There's no response. How is sending them out doing anything? And how is he correlating the crisis management team to the mass shooting a couple of weeks ago in Manhattan? This incident is gang related. Crisis management could have some boots on the ground, could be in the community, could be gathering intel, but it's not. They don't share intel with the police department. That's part of their whole credibility, is that they don't share the information that they get to give them street cred. That's what I've been told directly to my face, that we're not going to share information. We're not going to give you information. That we're going to take that information and we're going to try and do what we can do to prevent further violence.
Yeah, you know what really gets me? That entire area for years has been like a war zone between different gangs. In fact, if you go a couple blocks south, maybe 3 or 4 blocks south, the Ebbetsfield houses are there, and the Ebbetsfield houses, it has been known to be a stronghold of the GDs, the gangster disciples. And further south, you have Crips, and those guys have been there's been beefs throughout that area for years. In fact, during Juve around 2015, that one of Cuomo's aides was shot and killed during the Juve celebration. So what boggles my mind is that area has needed a sustained, prolonged, sustained effort from the department to squash out, to finally end all that nonsense. And to me, it's like when there was an initiative after Gabby was killed, Gabby was killed, but that seems to have all been lost in the wind now, and that project, that those houses are still an issue. Before I left the 7-7, we had heard of gang members in the 7-7 going down into the 7-1 where that's located to get firearms from those houses. That basically those guys in the complex were selling guns to our guys. And so I just don't understand how that area didn't get the attention that it deserved, especially after they knew that there was a shooting on that same block in November of 2024. We talked many times about how this department doesn't share intel, and we see it right here. And like you said, Ron, the community is the best source of intel, and there are numerous. If you watch the news reporting from this, there are numerous community members who say that they had warned the police about that area, and specifically about that bar. Right. And I just don't understand, considering that the area, again, has been a problem with gangs for years. Considering we have Ebbetsfield not too far away from that, and we had a shooting there prior in November 2024, why the attention wasn't paid to that area to prevent something like this from happening.
Go ahead, John.
Just back on the violence interventions. I mean, this is something I've been talking about since I left the police department. It's something I was vocal about while I was in the police department. We have zero metrics for success for this program. We're spending, I don't even know what we're spending. Honestly, the entire program is shrouded in mystery. That we don't know how people are picked. We don't know what their daily routine is. We don't know. We know they're making a lot of money. Most of them are making more than cops. And we don't know what their reporting statute. It was something I kept harping on even during the mandate, because I'm like, well, they're technically city employees. Why aren't they mandated to take the shot? Why did Marlon get fired and they're making $150,000 with health benefits when they're not, when they're technically city employees? They're part of this violent intervention program. And this is, again, to go back to, this is the leftist propaganda from the entire Democratic Party, because this isn't something that we just seen in New York City. It's everywhere. It's in Chicago, it's in LA, and it's one of these, what do they call it? Evidence-based public safety solutions. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And what I'm hearing is, not only did they fail at their job, they're still, out of Adam's mouth, they're still coming up with a plan on what they're going to do to try to prevent further shootings. I mean, where we talk about the police department, we're an instant response, right? Not only are we working to prevent crimes, we're instantly going to deploy resources, and we're instantly investigating who are the potential shooters, where is the potential for violence, what neighborhoods, what gangs are involved, and we're immediately going out into those groups. I personally think the violence intervention program is a complete, utter grift. It's a failure of a program. And again, this is like when people are sitting there and saying, oh, well, if I have to suck it up and vote for Eric Adams, at least he supports the police. No, I mean, if you want to say at least he's not a devout socialist, I could get behind that. But this is Zohran Mamdani's public safety platform in play right here. And instead of talking about the ills of this leftist, far left mindset and this anti-police mindset that's occurring currently in New York City, that we're allowing, that this administration has doubled down on, Bill de Blasio instituted, and he's doubled down on it. We're instead looking at some kid who's in the assembly who, yeah, he might be the Democratic nominee, but like basically what's happening, his public safety plan is just a continuation of Eric Adams' plan, same way, the same thing that Bill de Blasio instituted. So there's no difference when you look at that. The violence intervention program's a joke, and Eric Adams has again showing he's completely unqualified to be in his position.
If I may, that violence, it's also important to note that violence interrupter program has the budget for it has ballooned since like I think it was 1.4 million in around 2013, 2014, and now it's that CMS, the budget is $100 million for it. So what is that money going to produce? You know, and I also want to point out that numerous, not just in New York, but throughout the country where these violence interrupter programs are, there have been members of that program who themselves have committed felonies and have been involved in shootings themselves while they're part of the violence interrupter program. So I don't understand why we're continuing with this, and I can't see any like you said, where are the metrics of success for that program? You know, how can we measure what the dollars have been spent on in that program?
And we being the people of the city of New York, not the NYPD, because the NYPD doesn't get it. They don't answer to the NYPD, and they will tell you that right to your face. They answer to Mach J, right? The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. That's who they answer to. That's who they fall under. I used to bring in the violence interrupters into the roll calls. But the only reason was because when they're out there and they're hanging out with the bad actors doing their interrupting, right? With John can't see it, but the air quotes, right? I want my guys to know who they are, because they're not going to go up and identify themselves to the police. They're not going to tell us. And they tell you that. We're out there and we're not going to interrupt. I had an incident in PSA 9, and I reached out to the violence interrupter in the area to get out there, to get into the community. And I had to go up to him on the scene and tell him to remove one of his people because one of his interrupters was agitating the whole scene. But really, it's kind of like the guy didn't even want to talk to me because he didn't want it to be a bad look to the community. But I'm like, listen, before I go in there and rip this guy out, and it's going to escalate this whole scene, could you just get your guy the F out of here? Because what he's doing, he's supposed to be a violence interrupter, right? He's supposed to be working on the side of peace, not on the side of the police, right? But on the side of peace. But yet he's fighting, verbally the police and inciting the area. It blew my mind. And again, there's nothing you can do about it because they don't answer to you. They're not going to give you information. They're not going to share. They tell you, we're not going to share the information with you. Well, we used to call them and say, listen, we're hearing this. And we would never get confirmation on it. But we're just, listen, I don't want to say you're checking the box, but part of my plan was to involve them. So if I was getting intel on, gang violence in between two different developments, I'd reach out to the violence interrupters and say, could you get your people out there, see what they hear on the street, see if we can get any involvement? But I'd never hear back of what they did about it, if they did anything about it at all. But I could say that, listen, I tried every avenue, deployment, putting Eric and his people out in certain developments in order to try and, head off a certain gang going into another location like that. They would know. You knew the players. When you were proactively policing, you knew the players. So you talk about having a plan. We don't have a plan against these these mass shootings. Yeah, you do have a plan. It's called crime prevention. It's called having a crime plan, right? Having a violence plan. Going out and addressing the violence. Going out and addressing those who commit violence. Right? This is the need for the gang database. Right here is a perfect need for the gang database, because now you have two rival gangs that are shooting at each other. You need to know who else is in these gangs, where these gangs are from, so that you can deploy your resources appropriately into those locations to prevent further violence, so that you can get intel from your field intelligence officers, right? And from the intel division, who might have CIs in the area, right? I had a great FIO in PSA 9. He solved almost every shooting in the 114 precinct through his CIs and through his relationship with people in the community. That's your crime plan. That's your plan against these shootings. How do you say you don't have a plan? We're going to formulate a plan against these mass shootings. And you can't correlate the two. One's in gang violence and one's a psychotic man who drove across the country and shot up a building. You can't correlate the two. And you can't have a plan that's cookie cutter. You have to have an intel and counter-terroristic plan for the shooting in Manhattan versus your localized gang violence plan in a command.
So we're spending $100 million, and Ron, like, at the end of the day, it's kind of worse than checking a box, honestly. Like, you're required to do it, right? It's like part of what a commanding officer has to do.
Oh, did we lose John?
Because you have to check that box. You're being told to check that box, but at the same time, we're putting vital intelligence out there that's being divulged to gang members, to be people that are working directly against us, and we're paying them. The city of New York, taxpayers are paying us $100 million a year to further violence. I mean, we recently, there was a violence interrupter. The head of the violence interrupter program was arrested in a search warrant selling guns and drugs. I mean, to me, I always said it from the beginning, and I'll say it again. It looks more of redistribution of wealth and a weakening of the police department, and honestly moving the police towards a gang-based approach. Like, we're going to pay some of these gangs, and some of these gangs we aren't. It's much worse than just checking a box. It's dangerous to the cops. It's dangerous to the community. It's dangerous to the gang members. It's like the whole thing is a complete failure. And like, the more, like, just having those people on the stage, it's a slap in the face to every New Yorker that this program exists. And I laugh when people tell me we can't hire Marlon back. We don't have the money for that. It's like, oh no, but we have the money to pay gang members to do absolutely nothing. And you're telling them, oh, deploy out into the field. Yeah, what do you think they're doing at the end of the day? Come on, let's all be real. They're laughing at you and hanging up the phone, and they're writing that down, and that's how they're collecting a check and justifying their existence. And what'll happen next year? We'll throw another $30 million at it. So it'll be $130 million instead of just 100. It's disgusting, dude. Honestly, Eric Adams is a complete failure, and I don't think that if Andrew Cuomo got in, he would do anything differently. And if Zoran Mondani gets in, it's the same thing. I'm like, so our public safety plan is paying gang members right now. That's what we're doing, and we're divulging intel that's going to be used to harm the community and to harm gang members, to people that have no credibility. And again, there is zero metrics in this program for success whatsoever. Till today, from the day I started the podcast till now, I can't get one of these people to come on and defend the program. Nobody will come on and defend it because it's indefensible.
No, and I agree with you 100%. Letting them know that Gang A, there's rumblings that Gang A is, going to make a move on Gang B. And then the violence interrupters might have relationships with Gang B. You're right. You're tipping your hand. So, it wasn't done every time, but there were instances when there was a lot of chatter back and forth. If we had intel on one side, we'd deploy against it. But if there was a lot of chatter, which is a lot of times, I think it's Special Hagen is saying about there's a lot of talk about it online and everything else. Listen, the NYPD, especially the FIOs and the commands, they monitor the YouTube channels and they monitor the TikTok channels and the Instagram channels and everything else. So that is being monitored, and that's what I'm saying. Like they would post videos. They post videos, basically letting you know that they're coming after you and mocking the other gangs and things like that. They would put these music videos out all the time. So it's not like we were giving out confidential information. It's just when the information got out there that was so public, all right, let's get them involved and see if they can do something. If we had confidential information that we got from a CI or something like that, we would deploy against it and we wouldn't use them. But yeah, like you said, it's something that they're going to ask, what are you doing about it? And it's just, and then just to go back real quick, just Almost Done puts out Old Timers Day for people that don't understand what he's talking about. In 2019 in Brownsville, it wasn't a family day. It was the Brownsville Old Timers Day, which is a big event every year in Brownsville, where all the old timers actually that still live in the community and have moved out of the community come back to the community. And it was a really horrific shooting that day.
Yeah. Just to go back on Zohan and Eric Adams, again, for those of you who say that Eric Adams, who are saying that Eric Adams is the choice, I just want to point out that Zohan's policy in terms of violence interrupters is not much different from Eric Adams. In fact, Zohan has already promised that he's going to keep sending more money to the violence interrupter program, just like Eric Adams is doing right now. And again, Zohan cites his examples of success for the program are Chicago, Baltimore, and again, Culiacan, Mexico, the heart of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, who's now beefing. It turned into a war zone. Okay. So the violence interrupter program, this whole thing is just ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous that program exists, and I just, what also frustrates me is the department now going to bring this up to Councilwoman Althea Stevens, because she's the one who wants to get rid of the gang database, and here we have an example of gang violence happening. Are they going to use this as an example to put pressure on her to drop this whole remove the gang database initiative? I don't think they will. They're not. And again, we've talked about this before. How the department does not. They don't kind of, when they go to city council, they don't put up a good fight against these council people. So I think I don't know what to think of this, because the money keeps the wasteful spending we're seeing here, and the lack of a pushback from the department is just obscene.
Mary's asking, did they fund that program under Adams? No, they've increased the funding for the program. All right, you want to move on and see what the commissioner has to say?
Sure.
Let's do that.
Crown Heights this morning was a tragic, senseless act of violence. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. Our job now is to determine who is responsible and to hold them accountable. We have spent the past few hours poring over surveillance video, canvassing the neighborhood, and I can provide you with the following update, which is preliminary and subject to change. At approximately 3:27 a.m., we started to receive multiple 911 calls about a shooting inside of 903 Franklin Avenue, which is a lounge in Crown Heights known as Taste of the City. Officers arrived within minutes of the first 911 call and found numerous gunshot victims out inside of the location. Currently, we have identified 12 victims ranging in age from 19 to 61, 9 males and 3 females. Since the time of our last briefing, the victim count went up by 1 from 11 to 12. 3 of the victims have been pronounced dead. 1 male age 27 and 1 male age 35 who succumbed to their injuries at the hospital, as well as 1 male age 19 who was pronounced on scene. The 9 remaining victims are at local area hospitals with what is being described right now as non-life-threatening injuries. We are withholding victims' names at this time, pending family notifications. The investigation into this incident is ongoing. What we know preliminarily is that there was a dispute inside the crowded club that led to the shooting. We believe that there were up to 4 shooters involved in this incident. Our crime scene investigators have now recovered 42 shell casings from multiple guns. The shell casings appear to be from 9mm and .45 caliber weapons. At this time, no one is in custody, and the shooting preliminarily appears to be gang-related. Our detectives have recovered a firearm in the vicinity of Bedford Avenue in Eastern Parkway. We are investigating whether that firearm is tied to this shooting incident. As the mayor said, anyone with information is urged to call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-577-TIPS. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Pastor Monrose.
And thank you.
All right, I don't know that we want to watch the pastor and the violence, interrupt the crisis management intervention speakers. You let me know if you guys want to put that part up, because I really don't think they have anything to say that's relevant. But
Nah. Yeah, I don't think we need them at all. I mean, dude. The other thing is like there was like a part with Adams, like, and so the other part with him is like what he's basically telling you is he's leaning on these violence interventions. He wants you to pray. He wants the public to solve the crime for him. Tell us if you have information. I mean, the looks of this shooting, we could solve it online over YouTube because that's how much information's out there. But the other thing he's saying is he calls for gun control, so let's take away the ability for, law-abiding New Yorkers to have access to firearms to protect their home and their families. So he wants that. So, I mean, again, it's like, it's just a complete double down on failure. This is the leftist mindset. This is public safety under Democrats. And the Democrat Party for the last decade has been controlled by the Democratic Socialists of America. And now you're just seeing that they're the boss. Eric Adams' entire campaign platform around public safety in 2021 was the same as Zohran Mamdani's. Now it just sounds a little better when you listen to Zohran Mamdani's, but it's still the same campaign. It's just worded a little differently. That's all it is. The same money goes to same places. It goes to failure. There's no solutions. Nothing is going to prevent this going forward. They're just going to keep dumbing down the crime numbers, misrepresenting the crime numbers, and telling you everything's just your perception. Remember, people, it's only one incident. That's all they care about. It's only one incident. It's not 13 lives and the lives of the 100 or so people that were altered that evening. It's not that. It's only one incident. Don't worry about it.
Marlon, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. PB in the chat says this sounds like a mob protection racket. Only the NYPD is paying gangs for public safety and calling it violence interrupter. And yeah, it does, PB. But the problem here is that it's not. Even if that was the case, and again, I'm not gonna disagree with you necessarily on that. But even if that's the case, it's not working, because what are we seeing? The violence is still going up in those same communities where the violence interrupters are supposed to be doing their job. And if you look at throughout the country where the violence interrupter programs are, those areas are seeing rise in violent crime right now. We're talking Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis. So what are we paying for exactly?
Right, and Patrick Donahue, welcome back, Pat. He's got a question, right? Is there a review system to evaluate each violent interrupter similar to CI's quarterly reviews? Absolutely not. How many VIs, violence interrupters, get deactivated or removed for not being productive or engaging in criminal acts? Well, engaging in criminal acts, if they're arrested, they're supposed to be removed from the program. But as far as not being productive, how do you know they're not being productive? Well, they self-report. They self-report. There's no way to verify, right? Trust but verify. There's no way to verify. So all you can do is, quote unquote, Mock J, the mayor's office of criminal justice, is going to trust what they say. Oh, we interrupted. We prevented this shooting. We prevented this stabbing. We prevented this brawl in this development or in this neighborhood. And there's no way to disprove what they're saying. And I don't know if they have to put any type of documentation, but what documentation could you put? I don't even see how. It's intangible because it didn't happen, right? It's like you talk about crime prevention and crime statistics. The only crime statistics you can talk about is crimes that happened. Very rarely can you talk about a crime that you actually physically prevented, unless you had intelligence that Marlon was going to shoot Ron and John got the intel and collared Marlon en route to shooting John. Then you could step up and say, I prevented that crime. And here's the evidence, because this is what I have to present to court as to why I approached Marlon. How often does that really happen? You get grumblings, you have unofficial information, you put yourself in the right place at the right time, right? Everybody says, oh, you got lucky? No, you create your own luck by having proper intelligence and proper deployment. But you can't, it's not tangible. There's no way to look at it and say, how many crimes did I prevent by putting my plan in place, by putting my cops in the right locations, right? You look at it because your crime numbers will decrease, your violence will decrease, hopefully, if it's not just completely displaced. But there's really, it's very, very difficult. And there's no way. It's just, hey, listen, this is what we did. And they report whatever they want to report to say, hey, and then Mock J will put out that they've prevented all of this violence. But there's absolutely zero way to confirm that.
Yeah, and dude, how do we even know that these people are in New York City? Like, we don't know anything. We don't know reporting requirements. We don't know anything. Like, and what I mean by reporting requirements is, like, where are you? What does your day consist of? Do you work an 8-hour tour? Do you get vacation? Like, what does that look like? And I'll guarantee you right now, it's completely unstructured. And right now they could be in Florida with me, and receiving a check and saying, oh yeah, I prevented that. I hit up my boy and I said, shooting stopped, fight stopped. I'm telling you, it's a joke, dude. It's a legit joke. I think, well, I know we're gonna cycle off this soon. So, but like, when we get into that, like, think about all of the moped robberies, like 2 males on mopeds. And let's face it, like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. They're all here illegally. This is a third world problem that came in once Eric Adams started to welcome all the migrants and give $12 billion to all these people. Tell them, come to New York. If Texas doesn't want you, we'll take you. And he takes $12 billion of taxpayer money. And what we did is we funded new gangs from outside of this country to come in. How effective are these violence interrupters at stopping these third world gangs that were now a big, major problem in every borough throughout New York City, where 2 males on scooters are coming up and jacking people? They're not effective at all. They're not even tuned in at all. So again, it just shows it's a complete waste of money. And the reason I brought that up is because we just had an off-duty cop who was approached by two males on a scooter. This is about the fourth one in 3 weeks. We've had off-duty members of the service robbed by two men on scooters. Now we just had the off-duty member was armed, and thankfully he was able to get away from them. He killed one of the perpetrators, and the other one got away on a scooter. But like, what? Are we calling the violence interrupters for that? Are we calling the violence interrupters to stop these robberies from happening? And they're happening so frequently that they're even happening to off-duty cops frequently. And yet you're being told crime's down.
Yeah, well. To that point, John, I'm gonna say, how effective is the violence interrupters to even, gangs made up of guys, young guys who are born here? Because here's the thing, that the one of the rumors is about the shooting is that one of the victims is the 19-year-old might have been one of the shooters, and the 19-year-old is rumored to be a drill rapper. And the thing is that what I've heard is that he got into an argument with an older guy, an older gang member, and the beef erupted into violence. But the problem here is that drill music they're incentivized to what's the violence interrupter going to tell him when he's incentivized to continue doing that? That drill rap industry is now millions of dollars. Okay, and he's gonna what is the violence interrupter going to tell him that's going to convince this kid not to continue doing that when he's making more money than he's ever seen through drill rap? So I agree with you that it's questionable whether these violence interrupters are making a dent when it comes to these migrant gangs that are emerging, but I don't think they're even making a dent against drill rappers. And we see that with the growth of drill rap. I mean, first it started in Chicago, and now it's in multiple cities across the country. Okay, and now we're seeing it's clearly found a foothold in New York City now. And this is, even though the violence interrupter program has been a thing in New York City since around 2012, and by the way, it's been a thing in Chicago since the mid 90s. So how well has that worked out there?
Yeah, and again, good point. Just a quick answer for Eric Dim. Hi, brother. Hope you're feeling better. Are any of these violence interrupters in the gang database? 100% they are, because that's what gives them their street credibility, is they're taking people that have prior criminal records and they are putting them in these violence interrupter programs because they have the street credibility, right? So they can get in there and they can talk to these people and they can hang out with these people and they can have a conversation with these people because they can relate to them because they have prior criminal histories. So the answer to that is 100% yes. And to your point, Marlon, and to John, that, yeah, how much are these violence interrupters? Because the violence interrupters are traditionally from the communities. They're from the communities that they're serving. They're community specific, right? And they have been involved, and the people that they have in their interrupter programs have been involved in these local gangs as they were coming up, through their life. So now we have these new emergence of the migrant gangs that are committing a lot of this violence and a lot of these crimes, and especially a lot of these moped crimes, right? You've seen it increase. And we're going to transition to the recent two instances that we've had. One of them was early this morning or late last night, that an off-duty officer was robbed by two people. So before we move on to that, anything else you want to hit on this? I think we've
yeah. I think we covered it all on this. PB, just to answer your question, what is drill rap? Drill rap is an ultra violent form of rap music. That's that where the rappers the gang members basically brag about their shooting and what their gang is doing. It's very connected to gang activity and local, and it's very local too. So you'll have like one drill rap group beefing with another drill rap group in the same neighborhoods, you know, and they openly talk about what they've done in the music, even more so than it's ever been in music. And it's kind of been tied to a lot of the violence that's been happening in New York City, Chicago, and all these areas I mentioned. In fact, 2 weeks ago there was a homicide up in the Bronx too, and that the kid that was killed there, the video has been floating around where his assassin just walked up to him and shot him in the head. That is tied to drill rap in the Bronx too, and some ongoing beef over there. So it's just a massive problem right now for these big cities. So that's it.
John, anything else on this before we move on?
No, yeah, I just think what's the next solution? You know, I mean, we're gonna start paying illegals to be violence interrupters, because I mean, obviously, if it's so effective, right? Like we've been told, then why don't we have any illegals on the payroll? You know, I mean, it's a complete joke. So yeah, I got nothing else on it. Like I said, all of the aspects that we consistently talk about on all of our shows on the network, I mean, they're all just ingredients in this huge recipe that just cooks up this entire disaster, where we're seeing these completely violent, disgusting incidents and complete disregard for human life. You know, so it's and just one thing on the drill rap. Just think about how that, like this, you know, what Eric Adams' solution to the drill rap early on was, and his son's involved in this, by the way, too. He's just not a good drill rapper. He just never made it. The only people that ever really wanted to hire him was the Chinese Communist Party, which is weird, you know. I don't know how they came across him. I wonder. But, you know, his whole solution was, oh, we'll just ban drill rap. It's like, dude, do you remember the Constitution of the United States of America? Do you remember the First Amendment? Oh, no, that's right. You don't. And so, you know, but again, tell me how bad it's going to be under socialism. You know, even though, and most of the people in New York City think they're not living under a socialist right now. They're out of their minds.
Yeah. Eric Adams' son is now making party music in Albania, John. So.
Oh yeah, that's weird. Not Turkey? That's weird.
Well, you need to stop over in Turkey on the way.
Yeah.
And John, somebody in the chat wants to know why you keep flexing and showing off those Popeye forearms.
No, I'm not flexing at all. My back is killing me. I got to take a long drive tonight. My back is killing me.
It's killing you already. You're in trouble. You better pop something.
Yeah. So.
All right, let's move on. Other big news over the weekend. You know, there was a police-involved shooting. Hold on, sorry about that. I got to take this other one down. Sorry about that. Still a rookie here. Staten Island police involved shooting. Off-duty officer killed a man holding an imitation firearm. The NYPD says. So with this, supposedly a man was going in and having a dispute inside of a diner out in the Great Hill section of Staten Island. And so a couple of people called 911, and then he gets into a confrontation with a female off-duty member of the service who's, I believe her boyfriend is also a member of the service, and he was close by, comes over. They have a little bit of a exchange, and then the perpetrator takes out this imitation pistol, which you can see looks very realistic, especially at night. There's no way you're going to be able to tell that that's not a real firearm. And the off-duty officer is, you know, in a situation which no officer wants to find themselves in, especially off-duty, right? You don't have a radio. You're not wearing a vest, and you know you're confronted with a firearm. Luckily, the officer was armed and had to take defensive measures and shot the perpetrator, who wound up succumbing to his injuries. So let's just take a quick listen to the Staten Island Borough Commander as she gives a briefing on this incident.
Good evening. I'm Assistant Chief Melissa Eager, Commanding Officer of Patrol Borough Staten Island. I'm joined by Deputy Inspector Paul Muggio, Executive Officer of the Force Investigation Division. I'm going to provide an update regarding an officer-involved shooting that occurred earlier this evening in the Great Kills section of Staten Island. The information I'm about to provide is preliminary and subject to change. The men and women of the NYPD are never truly off the job, and tonight we saw that firsthand. 2 off-duty officers bravely ran towards danger and took immediate action. At approximately 8:02 p.m., a 911 call came over for a male with a gun in the rear of Andrew's Diner, located on Highland Boulevard. The 911 caller stated that there was a male behind the diner with a firearm. The male subsequently left the diner. A short time later, an off-duty officer was walking outside on William Avenue and observed the same male with a firearm displayed. That officer alerted another officer who was also off-duty. Both officers confronted the male. The officers gave multiple verbal commands for the male to remove his hands from the firearm and to put the firearm down, but he did not comply and pointed the firearm at our officers. One officer discharged their weapon, striking the male while he was holding the gun. This is depicted on surveillance video. An imitation firearm was recovered at the scene. Our officers performed life-saving measures at the scene, and the subject was transported to Staten Island University North Hospital, where he was pronounced deceased. Our officers were confronted with a dangerous and unpredictable situation, and they attempted to de-escalate the situation multiple times. This incident is being investigated by our Force Investigation Division.
So there you have it. It's a shame, and it just goes to show, number one, like she says, Chief Eager, I thought that was a very professional press conference that was given, direct to the point, no pomp and circumstance, nobody self-grandstanding. Certain principles weren't there because I guess they had nothing to gain from it. And she just laid out the facts as they were while backing up the officers out there. But again, it's how quick things can evolve, how quick things can happen, right? So, this girl and guy or whatever, they're out in their home communities, maybe. I don't know where they live. I'm not going to say that. Maybe they were coming from the diner and going back to their car. I don't know. And next thing you know, they're confronted with this guy who now pulls out this imitation pistol. Now, does he know that they're police officers at that point prior to him taking out the firearm? I don't know. That'll come out in the investigation later on. Did they identify themselves as police officers? Did they know that he already had a confrontation inside of Andrew's Diner? We don't know. These are things. But it just shows that how quick, and no matter where you are, right? We're going to talk about an incident in the Upper East Side, right? In a few minutes. And Staten Island, Great Kills. Do you expect to get involved in something like this? No, not really, right? You don't know, right? I talked about on an episode with that an incident I got involved in when I was a police officer in Newdorf, right? Where we were coming out of a movie theater and a kid starts, there's a fight and the kid starts stabbing somebody in the chest and I had to take action, right? And the only reason I didn't shoot the kid is because there was such a crowd around him, I didn't feel I had a clean shot, but you never know what's going to happen, and you always have to be prepared. And that's the mental part of police work that people don't think about. That You know, you always have to be prepared and you always have to be ready. And thankfully, in both these instances we're going to talk about, the officers were armed while off duty, which, you know, you're supposed to be armed unless, you know, you're going out drinking or you're going to the beach or things like that with a specific guidelines where you're not supposed to be. So again, you know, mental part of the job that people just don't think about.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, I just think, first of all, I'm biased. I worked for Chief Eager. I think she was a great cop, great supervisor, always good to me. I thought she's a great person. I think she is our most professional. So I'm definitely biased on Eager. So I'll always defend her. But like when I look at the incident as a whole, you have, you know, it was a sergeant and a female detective. I believe they were dating, both assigned to the Internal Affairs Bureau. She's not under the direct supervision of the sergeant, so it's not a conflict. There's nothing there. They're basically, if you really break it down, yes, they're off-duty cops, but just think about this. They're two people on a date in a very safe neighborhood in Staten Island. That, you know, where violence doesn't often occur, well, traditionally didn't often occur, but now as off-duty cops, they both felt the need to be armed on a date with each other, you know, and look how fast things transpire. So that's the thing that people that aren't cops don't understand. It's like the hypervigilance that you have, even while you're out on a date. Even while you're sitting there trying to have dinner, a time to like decompress and stress, and you really, like Igor said, you're truly never off duty. You never are. And I'll even go one further. It really, even in retirement, like this is like, you're gonna see things that other people aren't gonna see, and you know, you're trained to act, and more than likely you're gonna always continue to act your entire life. So you know, it's a terrible situation that these people were put into. Again, you know, when people demonize cops about shooting at suspects and individuals, I mean, do you really think this is what these people wanted to do? They were going out on a date, enjoying each other, and next thing you know, they're in a traumatic situation. And from what I hear is, they were actually, and I think it was reported on the news, that they actually have video surveillance of the male pointing the firearm at them. And you know, cops aren't gonna like, oh, let's see if he pulls the gun and it goes off. Let's see if it's real first. That looks like a real gun to me. I mean, so good job to them. And it's another life-altering situation. And you know, again, gets downplayed. You know, that won't fall into the shootings. You know.
Yeah, Mo.
Yeah. So you know, we've heard Eric Adams and his administration talk about that we have a perception problem. So I just want to say, like, you know, again, we've questioned the statistical the truthfulness behind their statistics, you know, and whether there's manipulation going on to kind of obfuscate the actual shootings that have occurred in the city. But I just want to say that good luck manipulating perception when you have such a rise in random violence going on in the city right now. You know, you have, if at any moment the odds of you getting involved in like a violent assault or robbery seems to be going up, then you know they can manipulate. They could continue playing those CompStat games they're doing, but the city they're going to have a even greater perception problem with what's happening in the city. And you know, just to your point about being vigilant, if this is happening more and more so in the city, you know, you young guys on the job, you have to be more vigilant, and you have to be even more prepared to be a cop when you're on duty and off duty. And in this case, we see, thank God, in both cases they were carrying their firearm, because God knows, you know, in Staten Island it was an imitation pistol, but God knows how, you know, that incident could have easily gone some other way, you know. And certainly in the case of the robbery, it could have definitely gone south.
Right, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Yeah. Jack is asking, Jack Stern from the Finest Unfiltered family. What's the protocol if someone has to respond to an emergency off duty after consuming alcohol? Well, like I said, there's exemptions to when you carry your firearm, right? If you're expected to be consuming alcohol, you shouldn't be carrying your firearm. If you're going to the beach and you can't secure your firearm, you don't wear your firearm. You don't have your firearm. Other times, you're supposed to be armed while off duty and carrying your shield whenever you have your firearm. So, I mean, what's the protocol, really? I mean, it's a kind of a broad question because if somebody has to respond to an emergency after consuming alcohol, it's really you're in a bad position. So you try not to put yourself in that position, and then you take certain actions, and then maybe not other actions. But if you're talking about someone who has to respond to an emergency, so now maybe you're leaning towards what if an executive has to respond to an emergency after consuming alcohol at the Salty Dog and going to incidences. Listen, if you're in a position where at any moment, at the drop of a dime, you have to respond to some type of emergency, maybe you shouldn't be consuming alcohol. And or if you're in a situation where you're going to a location, like, listen, we're adults. There's no rule in the NYPD that says you're not allowed to consume alcohol. You're not allowed to consume alcohol to the point of intoxication to where you aren't fit for duty, where you can't respond to duty. So there's your protocol, right? You're not allowed to be unfit for duty even when you're off duty, because then once you become involved in an incident, you're on duty. So, it's a tangled web. And again, another part of policing that the public doesn't always understand, where we say you're a cop 24 hours a day. These are things where you're held to that higher standard, and you're going to be scrutinized if something happens. Now, if these officers were out and were consuming alcohol, they get involved in this horrible incident, they take the same actions. The law is now that officer that fired his gun is going to get a breathalyzer test as part of the investigation. So that's another part that people may not know about. So, it's unfortunate. That's why you don't put yourself in those positions. Is basically, that's the protocol. Don't put yourself in those positions. What do you say, John?
No, yeah, that's my lieutenant. One of my lieutenants when I was a rookie, he was a midnight lieutenant, and all he wanted to do was retire. And he was like, he was like at the point in his career, he's like, I just don't want to lose my job because of you. Like he was a funny guy. But like one of the things he said, and it always stuck with me, is like, he's like, I'm never gonna get myself in trouble with alcohol because I don't drink. He goes, so I take the feather out of the hat. And he goes, if I'm gonna drink, I damn sure don't get in my car. And if I'm going to drink, I'm not going to have my firearm with me. He goes, so am I not going to not be able to protect myself or my family or somebody else? He goes, over having a drink. He's like, that's the decision that I'll have to make and I'll have to live with. He goes, so while I'm on this job and while I'm here in the city, I take the feather out of the hat. I don't drink. And it always stuck with me. It stuck with me my whole career. It still sticks with me till today. I always say that, like, I'll be out, everybody's drinking. I drove. I'll just get it'll look like I'm drinking. I'll have a glass of water with a lemon or a lime or whatever. And everybody's like, no one knows what you're doing. But in my head, that always sticks with me. Like, take the feather out of the hat. Like, don't give anybody the opportunity to get you or put yourself in a bad situation. So I agree. I mean, thankfully they were armed, because 100, it was a fake gun now, but it could have easily been one guy in there with a real firearm taking out the entire diner. And again, both of those people were assigned to internal affairs, who does have a bad rap. I myself have said it needs to be abolished, not because of the rank and file that are in there, but because of the way that it's administered and how the upper echelon of the NYPD and the mayor's office have corrupted and compromised the integrity of that entire bureau.
Yeah. And again, before we close out this segment, how could crime be down when random and unprovoked violent attacks seem to be on the rise? I just don't understand how those two incongruent details could be happening at once.
Yeah. And to John's point on drinking on the job, I think the best thing that happened to me was studying for the sergeant's test. Because prior to that, I did what we call the 4 to 4s, right? You do work at 4 to 12, and then you go out with your friends till the bar closes at 4 in the morning. And I did that, more than I probably should have at the time. But then as soon as I started, which was when I was young on the job, I started studying for the sergeant's test when I had like 2.5 years on the job. And because timing wise, it was like perfect. Right after my 3rd anniversary, I was able to take the sergeant's test. So instead of going out, I'd go home and I'd study. So I stopped drinking. And I remember after the sergeant's test, I went to a comedy club on Staten Island and had a couple of beers. And I was like, wow, I got a buzz from the beers which would never have happened. But because I had no tolerance anymore for alcohol, because it had been months since I'd drank anything, I never really picked it back up again. And then when I became a boss, one of the things I learned early on as being a boss is, somebody telling me, hey, if you do go out and you stop by and you're a boss now. So, there's an expression, when the shots start flowing, the bosses should start going. So basically, when the drinking starts going, exit stage left, because you don't want to be around and you're still a boss, even off duty. And so, yeah, I go out and maybe have one cordial one with everybody else that I would milk until the ice made it like almost clear water. And I'm not going to get in the car and drink and drive. And even to this day, I don't pick it up. I don't drink. So it's probably the best thing that happened to me as far as, with the drinking part, is that I started studying for the sergeant's test. And now Stephen S. is asking, what's the rest of the story? Attempted robbery suspect, EDP, has dead perp been ID'd and scrutinized? He has been identified. And I think the one question that was asked that we cut out of the video was if he had a prior criminal record. And I believe he did have a prior criminal record. Well, I don't believe in this situation, if I don't know that he was emotionally disturbed and he wasn't, starting a ruckus inside of the diner and then confronting the female outside and then the male coming over and it becoming a little escalated when they tried to de-escalate it. And it was caught on security camera because, listen, you can't walk down the block without setting off everybody's Ring camera as you're walking. So, it was caught on surveillance camera. That's why she's able to say that they tried to de-escalate it verbally several times. I don't think this is one of those situations like we had last year in Staten Island, out in the 123, where it was definitely suicide by cop, where the guy called in the 911 call of a man with a gun on himself and then was pointing his gun at the police officers. That was a suicide by cop. I don't believe that's the case here. I don't know at what point, like I said, that he did identify him. They did identify themselves as police officers, and at what point he pulled out his firearm. So I don't think that that's the case here, but I don't know 100%. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything different.
The Advance reported that they had spoken to the family, and the family had alluded that even though he did have a criminal history, he was emotionally disturbed that evening, and he was alluding to something that he was going to get himself killed. So,
oh, wow.
But like again, the Staten Island Advance, I don't consider to be a real great publication. I actually, any media I really take with a grain of salt these days. But it appears that way, right? You have a fake firearm and you're going to lift it at two cops that are telling you to drop the gun or they're going to shoot you. I mean, to me, it screams that was a suicide. You know what I mean? Suicide by cop. Because why would you do that? You know you're going to get shot.
Yeah. So I wasn't aware of that. So, anything else on this another horrific event? So yeah. So then again, late last night, just as I'm getting into to bed, I see an X post. We have another incident of an off-duty cop shoots a 30-year-old suspect dead while armed moped ambush. While the accomplice is still at large. So here we go again, where you have another incidence of two guys on mopeds roll up on this guy who's standing outside of a residential building, and he is approached, and the guy said, asks him, "Do you know so and so?" Which is basically his just way of rolling up on the guy and engaging him and trying to throw him off his defense, so that he says, "Oh, they're just asking me if I know so and so," and then one of them pulls out a loaded 9mm handgun, and the off-duty officer, again, thankfully is armed and is able to defend himself. Shoots this perpetrator multiple times, and he doesn't make it. But again, guy standing outside, minding his own business, right? And this is not far away, Marlon, like you said earlier, not far away from where the federal agent was robbed, was the robbery, was shot in the face and shot one of the perpetrators of a migrant gang that rolled up on him and robbed him inside of a park in I believe it was Morningside Heights, right? No, it wasn't Morningside Heights. It was up in Manhattan. But here we go again. You're muted, Mike. Marlon.
Oh yeah. I was saying, it was in the 3-3 that it occurred. At the maybe Highbridge Park. That.
Yeah.
But yeah. These random robberies of off-duty MOS is it's becoming concerning. That so many of it is happening right now. And again, I how can you say crime is down when these keep happening? The brazenness of these robberies keep happening. But I think, like we said earlier, it just shows that cops have to be even more vigilant now. On and off duty, you're gonna have to be paying attention, because we're seeing these crimes increase, and you never know when it could be your turn to, unfortunately, to be for them to try something on you. So you young guys got to pay attention and be vigilant.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. It's even listen. Would this robbery have even been reported if it wasn't an off-duty member of the service? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And is there, how many robbery patterns? We talked about it in the past. How many robbery patterns are there that are going on with these mopeds and these migrant gangs? And we just happen to see that they're off-duty members of the service that are being robbed. So it's getting, and they're getting involved in shootings. So that's why you're really the only reason you're seeing it. Because otherwise, if it wasn't for these off-duty involved shootings, would you even know that there were 30 robbery patterns involving mopeds? No, because it's not out there, because the perception's not good when you start talking about things like that.
Yeah, and if you're paying attention, also, this is the third MOS shooting for the week. So there was also an on-duty shooting in the I think it was around Sunset Park this week. So we have 2 shootings by off-duties and 1 on-duty, and then we have the mass shooting in the 7-1. So it's been quite a busy week in the NYPD, and again, they don't want that. They have a perception problem. They've even said it, but again, the problem is that the exact problem is that the rise of random acts of violence in the city seems to be increasing, and this is yet another one of them.
Yeah, John. Yeah, John.
I mean, and the other thing that, like, you hear me or no?
Yeah, we can.
You guys hear me or no?
Yeah,
we can.
Like, the other thing that nobody's talking about, I hear you. So the other thing that nobody's talking about is we had a couple of off-duty members who were robbed, and it never went mainstream. Viral News had put it out, he reported it, but no outlet had ever put that out. And they were robbed by 2 males on a scooter throughout Manhattan. So that never makes its way to the news. you know, and so like, are we to believe that these scooters are the two males on scooters that are running around? Are we to believe it's one person or one gang? Absolutely not. And I we think this is only happening to off-duty members of the service. Absolutely not. It's not. And I laugh because I think about a podcast me and Eric did. I think it was in October of 23, where John Shell was the then chief of patrol. He's on the news, and they were having 30 patterns of robberies involving males from scooters, right? Hispanic males from scooters, right? Illegals. And, you know, with taxpayer funded gangs, because we're paying for them to come here and rob us and commit these third world crimes on us. You know, we're clothing them, we're feeding them. Remember, we're still paying $1 billion a year to house these people. That's just to house, never mind feed, clothe, give them health care, and give them some money, right? So who do you think bought that scooter? You did. So, you know, these are going around. And John Shell was sitting there saying, no, we took care of that. It was only one crew. We took care of them. They're gone. Here we are 2 years later, and this pattern still persisting. And it's getting so much more violent that now even off-duty members of the service are being robbed. I mean, it really is a huge problem. And it's a huge problem for this administration, because they're sitting there and selling you crimes down. You're safe in New York City. This is the safest big city in the world. Well, I don't think so, because I don't think that in the safest big city in the world, off-duty cops are getting involved in shootings when they're out on a date. I don't think off-duty cops are getting robbed by people who are in that country illegally on mopeds. I just don't think so. I don't think people have to carry a firearm in order to be safe. So I you know, the safest big city in the world really fails on its face today when you look outside of the spectrum of big cities, not only in this country, but in America. New York City's failing. Disgusting.
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah. It's I agree with you, John. It is it's a terrible look, you know, and I've said before that they have no plan, you know, and we're seeing that here, because what do they keep telling us? Crime is down, and what? Okay, sure it is. Then why do these incidents keep happening? And well, if these incidents are happening, what's the plan exactly? I you know, I fear for the city going forward, because we have a multiple problems converging at the same time, and they have no plan for it. Okay, and they have no plan in the face of not having the money to fund any plans that they may have. So while we still have a continuing problems with illegals here, so I fear for what the city is becoming, and I just can't. I don't know what their plan is to stop stop the hemorrhaging. You know.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we have 2,255 people on watching this right now on different platforms. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the network, and let's get it going. Yeah,
That's a lot today, dude. I didn't even share this on my social media. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's up on your X.
Normally I share but normally like I'll retweet it and I'll send it out. Yeah. Like that's a lot. Yeah, that's doing well. I went down on a couple of platforms because I have to hit the button to go manual.
Yeah, you got to show me how to do that. You got to show me how to do that too.
Yeah,
on the IG. But but we don't know yet. Hold on, let me mute John again. We don't know yet if this is a migrant. You know, we're kind of making assumptions because in the past, and I don't like to make assumptions. I like to, but listen, you know, as John says, as Eric says all the time, he doesn't believe in coincidences, right? And how many John's putting his gas money on that it's a migrant. It's the truth. You know, how many of these robberies and robbery patterns have involved migrants? It's the vast majority of them. The vast majority of them. Listen, before the migrant crisis, when I was the borough commander in the Bronx, Queens for housing, I used to see these guys riding their mopeds back and forth, but we didn't have the robbery patterns, and we didn't have the drive-by, occasional drive-by, you know, scooter-by shootings and so forth. But it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. So I'm sure that'll come out today. So I'm sure that'll be one of the main questions that is asked by the media. But, I'm not sure.
Yeah, are we so sure they're going to even ask him, Ron?
I
mean,
think they'll ask. I think
Yeah.
that'll be a question that'll be asked.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure. So, all right, listen. We're 2.5 hours in, John. You want to go on any? You want to go anywhere else with this? With
Are you guys
hitting-
in a rush, or do you want to talk about the IAB letter?
No, that's fine. I got time.
So, all right. So, real quick on it, if you guys are just curious your thoughts. So over right before the weekend, I get a letter from the Internal Affairs Bureau. Like most of you guys that watch the show, the lives of my children, Eric's children, and myself and Eric were threatened by numerous individuals, known criminals, friends of the mayor and the police commissioner. At the same time that's going on, we're getting anonymous attacks online, sending photos that they're gonna, we have a beautiful family, we better watch out. All criminal acts are happening. And during that as well, the top team of John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, the citywide CRT team, is like coming on and just saying dumb things, right? And so like we winded up filing a complaint because we're like, this is ridiculous. I want to see what the job is going to do. The fact that there's criminal association happening in the upper echelon, and the upper echelon's misusing police resources. So we
John,
made
hold on 1 second. I just want to throw this in before we get deep into this. Neil S. just posted a New York Post just now. Moped riding Kirk shot dead after pulling gun on NYPD cop during robbery was an illegal migrant involved in 3 other thefts. There you go. You got your gas money.
All right, pay me my money.
Yeah, and your letter's up. I know you can't see it. Your letter's up.
Yeah. So I get this letter, and basically it says now, mind you, I'd made allegations against the police commissioner, against the mayor, the police commissioner, the chief of department, the chief of patrol, the deputy commissioner of operations, the first deputy commissioner, all of these people that are enthralled in misusing resources and sending those identified and unidentified members of service, plus known criminals, to threaten us and attempt to shut us down, to hinder our First Amendment speech. It's also a crime. It's official misconduct. So I had, I served 2 years in the Internal Affairs Bureau. I know fully well how these internal affairs allegations happen. So I created the letter I sent. I made it the subjects. I put what allegations they get and why they get them, and the evidence concerned on why they get them. Now, I get a letter from the Internal Affairs Bureau, Group 1, the Deputy and Full Inspector Dalwit Fikru, who's a career IB guy, and he basically says, "Oh yeah, we substantiated your complaint, and we disciplined the officers involved." And I'm sitting there and I'm going, "There's no way in hell that is true. There's no way in hell that they disciplined the police commissioner, the chief of department, the chief of patrol, the deputy commissioner of operations. There's no way in hell. What I think they did is they just took the people that those people ordered that said dumb things like to us, and they hit them. And the unidentified male who was threatening our kids, they just basically told them to resign, and he did. So that that letter again just highlights the incompetence of the NYPD. And just to back up, I have no problem with you being a career IB guy. I have a problem with incompetence, and I have a problem with someone who said that they set their career out to investigate cops, to root out corruption in the NYPD. And not only are they not rooting out corruption, they're covering up for it. And that's the thing that really bothers me.
Yeah, and let's not forget, John, that this case wasn't quote unquote acted upon until after the chief of internal affairs was removed by the current administration, and that there was obviously a lot of press. There was actually press. Was it the Post that put an article out on an interview that they did with you? And I think that's what got the ball rolling, where they finally, after the St. John Police Department came to your house, and knocked on your door because of an emergent threat that was reported by the New York City Police Department Internal Affairs Bureau to them, and then that became public, did they actually do anything? Because then they finally identified the person to you that they refused to identify, and said that they'll identify it through the local police department, who has zero jurisdiction, zero involvement in a case like that. It's been proven that you had another member of the service was arrested for using his computer in 2 different boroughs, was charged in 2 different boroughs because he was using the computer for nefarious acts with children, so they get arrested because that's where the crime occurred, right? They got on the computer in Brooklyn and in Queens or Manhattan, I think it was, and so that's where he was arrested. But in your case, where they got on the computer meant nothing to the Internal Affairs Bureau, and they wanted to just pawn it off to Florida and California, where Eric was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything got thrown out of the window, and there's so much that was involved in that case. But that was the one thing, is like highlighting just the pure incompetence. And yeah, and like we told you on the show, the mayor was corrupt, the police commissioner was corrupt, the chief of department was having corrupt. And since that time, the mayor was indicted. He was almost removed from his position. The police commissioner resigned in disgrace. The chief of department resigned in disgrace. And, and then we were told that, and also my allegation was the chief of internal affairs, because he was involved with some of the known criminals he was criminally associated with that threatened me. So he also gets removed during that time. And then Jessica Tish comes in and supposedly revamps the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau, but yet they follow the recommendations and the entire investigation of the previous investigator, who had gotten thrown out of the Internal Affairs Bureau for covering up corruption. So, I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, is anything really different, or was that just a dog and pony show? It's like, and again, I know better than all of these. Like, I worked directly for the New York City Police Department for 18 years. So did Eric. I worked within the internals of the NYPDs and IAB. I had top tier level access there, so I know exactly how this investigation is supposed to go. So if they're treating me like I'm an idiot, I probably know more than the Group 1 CO how that case should have went. If they're going to treat me like an idiot, could you imagine what they're doing to the public when they call 911 and they report serious corruption against a member of the NYPD? I don't trust that they're a competent enough bureau to do anything. And clearly they're compromised. Clearly the NYPD remains compromised. And it's the same thing when we look at the crime. If off-duty members of the service are getting robbed left and right, and we're continuously being told crime is down, do you think they're going to report? They're going to go out there and self-report. Oh yeah, we had 30 robberies this week in your neighborhood of 2 males on a moped. No, they're going to do everything they can to keep those numbers down, to keep on the mission. Crime is down, and Eric Adams needs to be the mayor. It's really disgusting. And again, the last point I want to make on it is that I really believe that the reason they would never investigate it is because all roads lead back to Eric Adams. Every criminality there not only involves the upper echelon of the NYPD, but on Eric Adams. So instead, they just smacked and gave some minor discipline to people who, in my opinion, didn't even deserve it, because they were just 2 dumb young rookies following orders.
Yeah, and the big thing about this letter, it doesn't tell you, you kind of glanced over it. It doesn't tell you who was disciplined. As complainants, you are allowed to know who the perpetrators are, right? That perpetrated these acts against you. So why aren't you allowed to know who was disciplined? Now, the internal discipline of what exactly happened, I don't know that. Listen, every time that we had a complaint, we have to call back the complainant, right? Even at the command level, when we were handling, outside guidelines, right? The OG cases, we'd have to call back the complainant and let them know what the outcome of the case was, what we found from our investigation. That cookie cutter bullshit letter, pardon my expression, is nothing. It tells you nothing. That letter, in all reality, could cover the fact that this identified sergeant who has since vested out was disciplined because they proposed discipline and they forced him to retire. So really, that could be the answer, right? That's how we closed out the case. We're closing out the case on that one sergeant, not necessarily against the other people that you named and you gave evidence against.
Exactly, because there was the charge of criminal association in there, which I think is honestly, besides like the two horrible things that happened in there were the threats against our children's lives, and the other thing is the criminal association of the upper echelon of the NYPD and them sending these people to threaten, right? Because and by all means, our names were ran hundreds of times in the New York City computers and giving out to underworld figures, our names and our addresses, threatening the lives of our family. And and New York City Police Department's just going to glance over that. You know what I mean? You're just going to glance over that and say, oh yeah, we disciplined all the officers involved. It's like, no, you didn't. The letter on itself, it's a documented history for like the complete lie, the lies that are being coming out of this administration. I mean, it's no longer, in my opinion, could be considered an agency that's credible. I don't believe anything that comes out of the NYPD DCPI. You can't believe anything that comes out of Jessica Tish's mouth or the chief of department's mouth or anybody's. It's not, to me, I mean, it's really a huge problem. I'm like, I see that, like, it really needs to be, like, the Internal Affairs Bureau needs to be gutted, and the whole upper echelon of the NYPD needs to be removed and replaced with competent people and people with integrity.
And just for the viewers' sake that don't know how investigations really work, like you said, your name, Eric's name, your prior history in the police department that's been quoted, John, Eric, quoted by the upper echelon, means that they ran your names in the computer, and it's a charge to do that for other than official police business, and to go at you on Twitter or whatever, threaten you, whatever, is not a legitimate police business, right? And it's very easy to establish because the IT could go in and just query your name and see who ran your name. It's as simple as that. It's not something that we could do, but it's something that they can do in their investigation. Very easily, just they can do a query on who ran John McCary, who ran Eric Dim. And it'll come back and tell you every member of the service from what terminal, from whether it's their phone, their department phone, or whether it was an NYPD computer terminal, and tell you exactly who. And every single one of those people should be getting charges.
Yeah, and just one more point before you go, Marlon. Sorry. Just one more point on that. I don't care if somebody looked up my arrest history or wanted to know where I worked because they wanted to be critical of my career. I could care less about that. Internal cop just wanting to say, like, oh, this guy stinks or whatever. Doesn't bother me at all.
But if you run CAS, you get transferred.
The thing that, yeah, but if you run CAS, they're getting transferred. If they just want to know, if they run Shell, they're getting transferred. But, like, my thing is, the guy that was threatening the lives of my kids, that's a serious offense to me, And then the fact is, some of the people that are associated with this underworld figure that also was threatening me, they ran my name and my address. I believe those are the people that matter. Like that's what matters. It's because you gave my name to not only someone has my name that's threatening my life and my kids' lives and my wife's life, but also you gave my name to underworld figures. Like, it's a crime. It's criminal, and so, like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not like, oh, you ran my name, it's against the patrol guide, I care. No, I don't care, dude. If you ran my name and you want to go look through all my collars and then criticize me, we're good. I got no problem with you. I don't care. I got a problem with people giving my name and address, trying to put my life in danger. And worse than doing that is putting my kid's life in danger, who are completely innocent. And you could say whatever you want about any of us, dude. Everything I say, I use my name. I don't hide behind fake monikers. I don't say anything else. I leave myself wide open for criticism, for litigation, for anything anyone's got a problem with. I'm out there. This is who I am. This is who I've always been. And because I'm critical and I give my honest opinion, the life of my kids was threatened by an NYPD cop, and the mayor and the upper echelon of the NYPD gave my name and my address to known criminals. I mean, to me, that is it's absolutely the worst sin, and shows why they should not be in the position they're in. And then for this administration to come in, Tish to come in and pretend like she's cleaned it up and disregard all of the serious allegations with the irrefutable proof I gave, it's unforgivable to me. It really is.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, John, that the problem isn't so much that it's IIB, because I don't think even cleaning up IIB would solve the problem. I think the problem is that there are multiple departments within the department right now. There's the IAB for like the regular cops, and then there's the IAB for the upper echelon. And the problem is that Sean Mohabir, again, all cops are woke, is clearly connected to Kaz and Chell and CRT and in all the initiatives involving technology that they were doing up there. And there's enough connections for us to infer that there might have been a concerted effort by CRT and the other players to harass you and Eric. And the fact is that if IB were to conduct a thorough investigation, it would bring up those names and those supervisors, and some of those supervisors now work in the same drone industry that was connected to Kaz and Chell and that whole drone initiative within the department. So I think they don't want a thorough investigation, because then it leads to more questions, and then we would keep going up the ladder, and eventually it lands on Eric Adams' doorstep. So again, that's the problem here. The problem is we have multiple departments, and there's protections in place for the upper echelon, and ultimately they want to protect Eric Adams and keep him in power. And as long as that's there, and as long as these people exist at the top, it doesn't matter what we do to internal affairs. It doesn't matter who we put there, you know. And I also want to point out that yeah, Tish is a more competent figurehead than the other people that were before her, but she's still a figurehead, and she only has room to run up until Eric Adams has a problem with it, and at which point I'm pretty sure he shuts it down. Because again, I want to point out that Shepard was never kicked back down to the rank he should have been after his numerous embarrassments to the job, you know, and those allegations brought forth by Donlin. So, you know, she's a figurehead, more competent one, but a figurehead with power only up until it runs into Eric Adams' door, you know.
Yeah. I got 2 points on this too. And Neil F is saying, you know, maybe the discipline officer wants retaliation for being disciplined. Who should John be looking out for? And that's a point that we brought up in the past too, where, you know, they had this person identified, but they wouldn't identify the person to you and John. So like you said, they're making threats. So also, you know, number one, they're making threats. They're making threats over state lines because you're in Florida. So it's actually a federal offense. Well, I don't understand why there was never any criminal referral in this matter, because it's not just, listen, serious misconduct, right, is what internal affairs is about, right? But they're also, you know, if it's something criminal in nature, they're supposed to be conferring with the integrity district attorneys in whatever borough, you know, county district attorney that it resides in. So that was never happening. And my second point, I've said this on our podcast, The Executive Perspective, that I never really agreed with you and Eric when you talked about abolishing internal affairs, but then after the most recent, scandal and the removal of the chief of internal affairs because of the obvious interference with cases involving the upper echelon of the NYPD, I changed my view on it. And the fact that I do believe that we had Jim Walden on earlier. I think that his plan for some type of Department of citywide integrity, it might be the answer to oversee the police department, to oversee all city agencies, and that the Internal Affairs Bureau can go back to White Sox and people, which is an expression for those non-MOSs, looking at the minor violations within the department. And don't know if John's with us because he's frozen.
Yeah, he's definitely frozen.
Yeah, I can't even unmute him.
Yeah, I don't think he could hear us either.
Yeah, he's in a dead spot on the side of the road somewhere.
Yeah. I'm gonna send him a message that he's frozen. But yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go back to what Eric said, and that I've been thinking about that a lot ever since he said it. That I think at this point the NYPD needs to become a sheriff's department. I think it needs to have an elected sheriff, because I don't think the system that we have it has worked, and it hasn't worked for we can go back in history and look at all the other past corruption that this department, systematic corruption this department has been involved in, and not just that, but the incompetence, and I think with a sheriff, an elected sheriff, there would be more accountability. I think the two problems are the NYPD is too big for its own good now, and it needs. I wish personally that it could be more localized within the boroughs, and I think that would help with accountability. And I also wish that the leaders would be sheriffs, just like Florida or a lot of the other states. Yeah,
Jack agrees with you. Jack Stern says elected sheriffs work way better than mayoral appointments. It allows the people to vote on their leader. I don't. Let me see if we can get John back.
Oh yeah, he's back.
Hey, welcome back. Yep.
No, we can't hear you, John. Yeah,
I'm out. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna end out then.
No, you're here. You're back.
Oh, I'm back.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, but I I'm gonna jump out. If you lose me, just kick me off, bro. But I appreciate everybody for being on here. But yeah, no, I think exactly what you were saying about internal affairs is correct, Marlon. When you were saying, I didn't hear what you got to say, Ron. I blacked out after that. But but what Marlon was saying, where the Internal Affairs Bureau, it's definitely layered. It's different organizations, right? Like if you're a rank and file cop, they're gonna hammer you. If you're up top, you basically could do whatever you want at this point. None of the rules apply to you, and even laws. You're not going to face a criminal investigation, which is scary to me to think. It's like I really don't believe that people are above the law, and I don't believe anybody should be. And just like I really got nothing else on that. But last thing before, just curious your guys' thoughts about the whole thing that transpired with Kaz on social media, where I retweeted him. He started getting back and forth with a former assistant commissioner, retired lieutenant Kevin O'Connor, and then basically Shell came online saying that he would do an X space with identifiable retirees and members of the NYPD. Do you think that comes to fruition? Like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I don't think that'll ever come to fruition, because these guys, what have they shown so far that they can't take criticism, And that's one of the biggest problems with the NYPD is I think never having been a supervisor, so I don't know that other side, but I was a cop, all my entire career, and a detective, which is still a cop, okay, street cop. But one of the problems we have in the NYPD is that it's hard to disagree with the upper ranks. It's hard to if there's a bad idea going on, nobody wants to tell the boss it's a bad idea because they're afraid you're going to be labeled as discourteous or a boss fighter. And I think that's a massive problem in NYPD. And we saw the results of the problem during the scamdemic, because how many people, we've already noted what me and John, when we spoke out, and the pushback we got. And I've already told you how they tried to like basically railroad me, but that's the problem in the job. It's there needs to be a system where you can where you can disagree with the bosses without them in making it a discourteous, making you seem like you're being discourteous just because you object to something that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with Marlon, because what has happened is it's become, an ego thing.
Yeah.
Instead of, people just being able to just listen. I was a boss for the majority of my career, right? Over 21 years of my career, out of the 31 years, I was a boss. People talk shit about you. If they don't talk shit about you, you're not doing your job, right? And even to go back, we lost John again. Even to go back to John's point about people running you in the computer. Listen, whenever you were a boss, the first thing they did when you walked through the door is they ran your badge, what used to be badge, right? Your arrest record, to see, hey, what kind of cop was this guy before, so we can know. Now they can run your 50A, and they can run, everything through public domains, so they don't even have to do it and get in trouble. But I don't know. And this is the part that John's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was that Viral News was talking about that he's always liked Kaz, and he liked him in the past, but when he was a detective, better than when he's a deputy mayor. I think he's making a point that his post got a lot more views when Kaz was with the police department than when he's reposting stuff of Kaz as the deputy mayor, that they're not getting the views that he got when he was in the NYPD. And then Kevin O'Connor made a post that he's, he was never a cop. And then as you see here, Kaz, responds back, hey, Kevin, can you tell me what you think really makes a good cop? I'd like to compare our careers in law enforcement and see how our experiences line. So, again, when I was in the NYPD and I was an executive and I was one of the first commands to get a Twitter account, right? We were told, don't engage the quote unquote haters. Don't get into a tit for tat, because at one point I actually blocked one of those people that they would just hit me with comment after comment after comment about illegally parked vehicles and stuff like that. And I got a phone call to unblock them. You're not allowed to block from a public account. So I unblocked them. But they told me, just don't respond. Don't get into a back and forth. Just let them voice it's their opinion. They can voice it. Let them voice it. And that's that. Where we see now, and they've actually been, I don't want to say disciplined on it, but it's been through the Department of Investigation, an investigation through the Department of Investigation that they were acting in an unprofessional manner through the social media, the way they were handling certain media people and other posts. Now here, John Schell is using his personal account, but again, it's one of those borderline things where he's using his personal account, but he's talking about business, job business. So it kind of like it blurs the line a little bit. But this is John Schell's personal account. This is not his chief of department account. And then, they start going back and forth. And when Kaz is saying, he'd like to compare careers and everything else, John Schell says, I'm in. We should start an next conversation. And the only people who can participate have to identify themselves, show their profile face, and have been in the NYPD. Nobody can hide behind their keyboards. I just find that ironic, related to the prior conversation we just had. about people hiding behind it. And I'm not saying John Shell was one of those people hiding behind the keyboard at all. And I don't know that John and Eric have ever said that, but and then John responds, I'm in, let's do it. Let me know when you're available to discuss. And what John's saying in his question is, do you think it's ever going to come to fruition? I don't think it ever will. I don't think it should, to be honest. They need to separate themselves. They need to keep on point, keep on business. Whatever their point is, whatever the narrative is that they want to portray, that's what their social media platform is for. It shouldn't be this back and forth with anybody. Kevin O'Connor, I worked with him. I have respect for him. We're looking to actually have him on our show, but he responded with his personal feeling from his personal account. He's a civilian now, and what he thinks about Kaz and what's going on with Kaz. Kaz shouldn't respond. Don't bother responding. He's a civilian now. Don't respond. Just let it go. And John Shell, the same thing. I feel. Don't get involved. Don't get involved in it. It's not going to happen. We're not going to have an X space where John Shell and Kaz Daughtry and John McCary and Kevin O'Connor and Ron Layson and Eric Dim and Marlon Bethel and all these other people are going to get on a space and have an open and frank discussion. It's just not going to happen. And it's not going to happen, in an X conversation with a thread, either, which is what I'm not sure which way they're looking to, have this done. So he's asking, what do we think about it? I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah. Same here. And like you said, what productivity could come from that, I mean, they don't want to come onto this network and have interviews, so we're going to have an open discussion where members of the NYPD could actually come on and talk. I don't think so. I mean, in a perfect world, I do think an open and frank discussion would be great, but I don't think that can happen, because if you don't have the courage to even come on here and have an interview where most of the interviews on this network, I'd say, are pretty fair, So if you don't want to come on this network and have an interview, then do I think we're going to have an open, frank discussion on Twitter? Nope. So again, why the back and forth? Why continue this? What's the point of all of this?
Yeah, and like you said, they've had the opportunity to come on this show. Again, I don't disagree. They don't come on. To be honest with you, if I was in their position, I wouldn't come on. But yeah, they've had, there's been an open invitation. John and Eric are always respectful, and they're going to ask the questions, but they're not going to try to corner anybody or we've seen it. We've seen people come on the show that weren't fans of the police and they were treated with respect. And so, yeah, I don't think it's going to go. I just want to go back real quick to your point about the sheriff. And I agree with Captain Coke, where he said that, this city would wind up with a socialist sheriff as well. You look at the voting history of New York City and think about what type of sheriff they would be appointing. They would be appointing someone that, is running more instead of proactive. This isn't the South. This isn't the South where you're going to have people that are going to vote in a law and order sheriff that's going to go on TV and is going to go on Twitter and say, if you pull a weapon on us, we're going to shoot you dead. Why did you only? What do you think about your officers? Shooting 170 some odd shots. Well, that's because we ran out of bullets. Could you imagine somebody in New York saying that? So I don't think that going the route of a sheriff in New York City would work against us. I think, what you're voting in, you got to vote the mayor in, but the mayor has to give that autonomy back to the police department. You know, you work for the mayor, but you have to be the boss, and you have to be able to, you know, just get it done. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ron.
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that I see a point, but I think one of the problems with the system that we have now is there's no accountability. For instance, the city, the NYPD constantly says the laws. We have to hold accountability to the other stakeholders in the justice system, in the system. So they're placing blame on the laws. Then we hear the DA's office will blame the laws again, and it's to me it's like nobody wants to take accountability for their role in the system and for not living up to their responsibilities in the system. And that's my problem with the system that we have now. So the reason why I think a sheriff would be better, even though sure I agree with you, there's a likelihood that we're going to elect a leftist sheriff, but that with that I see the people can quickly, just as quickly as they elected him, would unelect him when they see things going south. See, the problem I find with the system we have now is we're the boiling frog in the pot right now, and we're slowly getting, we're slowly getting socialism regardless. Okay, Eric Adams, we've pointed out numerous times, a lot of his policies are socialist. What's happening in the city of New York, especially with city council, is we're getting socialist programs. So instead of having the boiling frog scenario, let's, if the sheriff wants to push in his full socialist agenda, go ahead. My point is that it'll wake people up sooner rather than us slowly trickling our way there anyway. And at least with the sheriff, when that policy goes south really quickly, the people will equate the policy failure with that same sheriff and will unelect him, just like how we're seeing with Eric Adams' terrible polling right now. Everybody hates Eric Adams, and there's a greater likelihood that he gets unelected now, that he doesn't get reelected now, than the chances of him getting reelected. And that's what I would like to see in whoever's running the NYPD, instead of everybody being able to displace accountability on everyone else, and nobody taking account of what they actually did to help get us in the poor position we are now as a city.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. So, listen, there's an argument to be had on both sides of it. I don't know what the answer is. It's I know that we're in trouble and we need change.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's that. So, all right, we're over 3 hours in. John is lost in the woods and lost his signal.
He's driving through the swamps right now.
Yeah, I want to thank John and Eric. And listen, we know that I've put this up before, and Eric is saying that he has a kidney stone. He's having a problem, and he's in a lot of pain and everything else. But we all know we want to wish him luck on his latest episode up there in Alaska on the Gold Rush.
Yukon.
The reason he's not on now is Parker Schnabel put him on a double last night and didn't want to turn the wash plant off because he had to get his last bit of gold. So I want to wish him luck and hope he's feeling better. And then, tomorrow, we have the Sal Greco show at 13:05, where he'll be talking about, local politics and the goings on. I'm not sure. Do we have who he's got on?
Yes, he has the reporter of the article from last week regarding the her name is
Candidate
Kelly
assessment.
Grace Price. Yeah.
Oh, from about the psychological assessment division, the candidate assessment division. All right, so they'll be on tomorrow. So there'll be another interesting conversation tomorrow at 13:05, and then tomorrow night, make sure you check it out. 7:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the 10-4 Tavern, and you have their lineup.
No, I don't. Actually, yes, I do. They will be having. I'll tell you in 1 second. I don't know if you want to go on.
No, I know he's the former. You got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm sorry, I can't pull it up right now, but they will be having another guest. It's actually a former U.S. Marshal. He's the longest serving U.S. Marshal of Arizona, and his name
David
is
Gonzalez.
Yeah, so
David Gonzalez. He's the 20-year U.S. Marshal from Arizona, and he commanded the Arizona Department of Public Safety. So he'll be on tomorrow at 7:05 p.m. Sorry about that little glitch there. And then we'll be back. Rob and I will be on Wednesday night at 5:05 p.m. Of course, you'll have John and hopefully Eric back Wednesday morning at 8:05. And then Rob and I will be on the Executive Perspective at 17:05, 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to have on retired Emergency Services Detective John Latanzio as our guest. John spent the majority of his career in emergency services. He started out in the housing police department, merged over, started in their housing emergency squad, and came over into the emergency services unit, finished out his career. So I know John from prior to the job and on the job, and obviously Rob knows him from his work in the emergency services unit. That's going to be a great conversation. Find out from the perspective of an emergency services detective, the things that they had to deal with, and also their interactions with supervisors and the executives that they dealt with on the job. So that'll be great. And then the rest of the week, the lineup as usual. Sal will be back Thursday, 13:05, and then you'll be on with John and Eric for the roundtable on Friday at 08:05. So until then, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys, and thank you, Ron, for coming on and being a great host. Okay,
No problem.
And just want to remind you guys, the Executive Perspective on Wednesdays, they have a great segment where you can ask them any question, and it's a great point. It's a great opportunity for those of you in the job, especially those of you in the executive ranks who, the rookie captains out there, to ask them questions. We have decades of experience from Ron and Rob, so that's your opportunity to ask questions that you may have difficulty doing so on the job to the upper ranks. But thanks for coming on, Ron, and thank you guys for tuning in today.
Appreciate that. Be safe, everybody.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?